Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another round of the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform known only as iRacing on the PC. Tonight marks round 2 of the 12-round calendar, and we are back with the second lobby's worth of action tonight. That's right, we're focusing on Lobby 2, what of their race having occurred, or their races I should say, having occurred yesterday. We're taking a look back at all the action as if it were live, bringing all that racing action. And of course, this lobby known as the IMB Racewear lobby, with IMB Racewear being the title sponsor for Lobby 2. And with our drivers getting ready to go racing at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, our schedule for tonight is as follows. Times in British Summer Time, that's BST or UTC +1. At 8 o'clock this evening, so in just under 14 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with the qualifying session, the 20-minute session, to determine our grid order for the purposes of the sprint race. The sprint race will follow immediately after at 8:20. That'll be a 15-minute race, where the only goal is to be at the head of your class come the end of it and pick up the maximum possible points, and then we'll be taking a brief break before returning at approximately 5 to 9 this evening for the build-up to the second race of the proceedings, and that is the feature race. That'll be at 9 o'clock, and that'll be a 60-minute race with the all-important mandatory pit stop, and we're looking to see how our drivers' strategic nuances work out in trying to get the best possible result to further their championship campaigns. Tonight's broadcast, of course, being brought to you via one of 3 media platforms. Firstly, if you are a YouTube user, you can tune in via youtube.com and particularly at NXTGEN Racing's YouTube channel. Alternatively, if you are so Facebook inclined, you can tune in via facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing. Or last but not least, if you are Twitch inclined, you can tune in via twitch.tv/TX141. And well, who is TX141? That's me. I'm your host, broadcaster and commentator tonight, Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And it's great to be back for another round of racing action here at the Road Atlanta Raceway, as we're waiting to see all of our drivers go full attack on this roller coaster ride of a circuit. And of course, Lobby 2 sponsored by IMB Racewear, and let's introduce our title sponsor for this lobby. So who are IMB Racewear and what do they stand for, I hear you ask? Well, IMB Racewear, in short, delivers racewear for both sim and real-life racers, which enables the racer to make the impact they always wanted. What sets IMB Racewear apart from the competition is that their racewear prides itself on individuality, as it is designed for you, by you, meaning that each product is fully customizable, unlike your typical off-the-shelf racewear products. Moreover, whether you're looking for racing gloves, racing shoes or team clothing, there are no limits to levels of customization available. And if you want to know more about IMB Racewear and get your hands on your own bespoke racewear today, be sure to head to their website. That is imbracewear.com for further information. That website, once more, imbracewear.com. And of course, we're very grateful to have IMB Racewear with us sponsoring Lobby 2, and they are contributed to the prize pool for Lobby 2 by offering up a set of custom gloves for the GT3 class winners. And of course, that goes into the prize pool alongside a cash prize, which is to be confirmed for our GT3 class drivers, plus also the cash prize pool for our LMP AM class drivers. Now, we talk about our drivers, of course. It's only appropriate that we come onto our championship standings after the season opener. And after what was an absolutely brilliant season opener at Watkins Glen last time out, it was the case that in the LMP2 AM class, or LMP2 as it's just basically known for this lobby, Michael Price currently leads by only a single point there ahead of Paul Scott. The two drivers going toe-to-toe over the course of the proceedings at the Glen. And it was Michael Price who came out on top in the end, picking up the more consistent form of points, but Paul Scott indeed picking up that win in the feature race and also the fastest lap of the feature race, meaning that he's not too far behind. However, both drivers have to be wary of the fact that the pack is chasing them, with Jack Whyborn and Sam Holman both on 35 points, only 4 off of Paul Scott, and here's the case that Whyborn is ahead of Holman based on result count back only as they go into tonight. Barry Meacham on what is at 33 points there in P5, 3 points ahead of Mark Baker and Paul Williams, the two team Tetra Rouge drivers there sharing the points of 30 each, and it's Stefan Vessels in P8 with that retirement in the feature race, curbing his momentum after a superb run of form in the sprint race with that pole position in qualifying plus the fastest lap, and Jonathan Collins rounding off our 9 drivers there in the LMP class standings. Meanwhile, as we come to our GT3 PRO class drivers for the IMB Racewear lobby, it is the case that we saw the perfect round for Peter Lemkens in the season opener. He made a statement with the maximum possible points to haul of what is 56 points for picking up everything. The wins in both races, pole position in preparation for the spin, and of course the fastest lap in both the sprint race and the feature race. Now, will he be able to do it again tonight, or could we potentially see some of his rivals start to close the gap And Lucas Romano there on 37 points, one of 4 drivers, all looking very fast on similar pace. Lucas Romano being only a single point ahead of both DDD Vlaming and also Dirt Bouts there, both drivers on 36 points, but Vlaming ahead of Bouts based on countback. And then Jeremy DeBova coming in P5 there on 35 points. But it's not to count out Matthew Prouting, who also showed great form there, and it is the case that Matthew Prouting on 30 points, he'll be looking to try and assert himself back into that pack and try to pick up a podium or two, I can be sure of that. Gus Franke meanwhile, P7, not quite having the form in the feature race, nor Sean Scooter or Lamet Wedder. All 3 drivers there having that retirement in the feature race, and they'll be looking to get some major points on the board tonight to get themselves revived and back onto a flying start. But meanwhile, in the GT3 AM class, it is the case that after the season opener, which saw Lorenzo Gualtieri pick up a good amount of points, in fact picking up the win in the sprint race and a good result in the feature race, and also the fastest lap of the sprint race, 50 points to his name. Well, there was a lot of drama in the AM class with the fact a number of drivers who did very well in qualifying falling down the order due to incidents in the sprint race. The feature race also seen some incidents. It was Kurt Van Hoenacker and Navarro de Bova who 40 points apiece line up P2 and P3 in those standings, with Navarro de Bova behind Van Hoenacker, his teammate from Challenge DB2, and that is based on result countback. But Navarro de Bova picking up the win in the feature race in a superb drive in the end, and we're expecting plenty from him, plus his teammate Van Hoenacker tonight, who was very consistent and also picked up that pole position in the qualifying session. But let's not count out P4 man Tristan Dino Brega, who started off very strong, but a major incident in the feature race saw him drop some critical points, which would have seen him right up there at the top of the standings. And Davide Favo, P5 there, with the fastest lap in the feature race, 28 points, and he is ahead of Elwyn Sykes and James Slates only on result countback. It is the case that we've got some very closely formed drivers here. The pace is very tight, and well, can Chris Keenan find a little bit more pace to close that delta of 5 points to James Slates tonight, with Arjo Kregel there dropping out of the feature race, that retirement costing him dearly. And the same for Mark Sykes in the sprint race, as we see Kregel and Sykes there completed our top 10. And then last but not least, having participated in the sprint race but retiring from the feature race, it was Liam Tack in P11 on 16 points. Now, outside the Drivers' Championships, we do come on to the Mark Sykes Designs Team Standings Championship, and we can see here it is the case that RP Motorsport Pro-Am are currently leading on 93 points, and it should be pointed out that the teams that you see here may either be located in a single lobby, so where it's the Apex Racing Academy lobby, Lobby 1, or alternatively the IMB Raceway lobby, that's Lobby 2. Some of the teams will be split across the lobby, some will be located fully in a single lobby, so we do have quite a mix here, and we can see that it's RP Motorsport Pro-Am who currently lead by 9 points over Altitude Esports there, and McChange by DB2 are bringing up the top 3 on 80 points. But they've got to be careful, because between them and Hilliard Esport in P6, there's only a 5-point gap, and it's only a further point to Verano Motorsport in P7. That shows you how close the hunt is, and let's not forget in between them we have NXTGEN Racing and Racing Team Astra, Team Orange, P4 and P5. Behind Verano Motorsport in P8 there, that's McChange by DB1 on 71 points, and they are 3 points ahead of NXTGEN Racing with Sam Cases UK and Team Tetrarouge, who complete our top 10. CXR Project Black in P11 on 65 points, only 1 point ahead of one of the 2 Crest Autosport outfits, that's Crest Autosport Ferrari on 64 points, and behind them is their second outfit of Crest Autosport with Apex Tracks on 60 points, alongside RTA Blue, that's Racing Team Astra Blue, and TGC Racing complete our top 15. Outside the top 15, RP Motorsport Senior there in P16 on 52 points, and it's only on countback that Excite Racing are behind them in 17th, with DRS Esports LMS1, 1 point ahead of DRS Esport LMS2, P18, P19, and it's Team Racing Netherlands who complete our top 20 there on countback on 48 points. And then outside the top 20, but looking to build up some momentum tonight, RD Simsport on 42 points, and there's a special thing that's occurred as of tonight with RD Simsport, and we'll come on to that very shortly. They're P21, Hollerton Racing P22 there, MRC team on 35 points as well, but countback puts them P23, and then it's BRM and TGC Bottom Split Heroes both on 33 points, but BRM ahead of the TGC outfit based on countback. Now, of course, we've gone through our championship standings. Let's go on to our track and venue for tonight. We stay in the United States of America as we go into the second of our 3 rounds in the United States of America, and we're in Hall County, Braselton, Georgia, in the United States of America for the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. And whilst this image does not do it justice in terms of the roller coaster ride this circuit is made up of, it is the case that there are 12 corners here, and this circuit is one of the fastest on the calendar for average overall speed. And this image provided to us by simracingwiki.com. We're very grateful to them as always for providing us with our circuit maps. This image shows you that the circuit seems to consist of two halves, a more aggressive and winding opening half of the lap that runs from turn 1 all the way out towards turn 6, and then the second half that runs from turn 7 down towards turn 12 seems to be the faster paced section. Well, it is indeed the higher average speed towards the end of the lap, but by no means is this circuit not thrilling in either part, in the fact that, as we'll go on to see, this circuit is full of undulations and blind apexes, whether it be the run through turn 1 uphill into the blind apex of turn 2, 3, and then it's down through 4 into the S's that extend up to turn 5 before into the slightest two corners of the circuit, turn 6 and 7, and it's the long sweeping run down the back straight through turn 8 and 9 up into the heavy braking zone for the turn 10 chicane. We'll be seeing the cars bottom out. They're under braking as they come downhill. They'll go through the chicane, and it's over the blind summit apex of turn 11 down the hill into 12 to complete the lap, and we'll bring you the onboard of a number of drivers in the qualifying session. Now, speaking of sessions, we have to talk about rules, of course, and it is the case that the setup our drivers are running tonight will be the iRacing sprint setup for both races. In the sprint race, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points, and in the feature race, we'll see that the grid shall be set as a reverse grid based on the results of the sprint race. The grid shall be separated into car classes, so the LMPs will start ahead of the GT3s. The GT3 drivers will not be segregated based on whether they're Pro or AM. They'll be mixed together based on the results of the sprint race, and we'll see that the LMPs will start approximately 2 seconds ahead of the GT3 drivers, and that will be a gap that is managed by the lead driver of the GT3 class versus the rearmost driver of the LMP class. There should also be one mandatory pit stop, which will require drivers to take on fuel. Changing tyres, however, is entirely optional. Each driver will have one fast repair available as well in the feature race, and last but not least, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty in the feature if they accumulate 20 or more instant points. Well, that was quite a mouthful in terms of the rules and regulations. Let's head back to those live pictures at the circuit as our drivers are just getting set right now to go racing and starting off that qualifying session in only what is 3.5 minutes time right now. And well, we are looking at Peter Lemkens, the RP Motorsport Pro-Am driver here, who, as we said earlier when we were talking about the championship standings, really dominated the show in the GT3 Pro class last time out with that absolutely stellar perfect night. And can he do it again tonight? That will be the big question. Now, we are hearing down in the paddock that his teammate Lucas Romano here for RP Motorsport Pro-Am as well, the BMW M4 driver, may be looking the one to edge out Peter Lemkens tonight. He is looking very fast, and we can see that in this final practice session with the two of them there only separated by 0.02 of a second, and they are both 0.2 of a second clear of DDD Blaming. We'll have to wait to see. Of course, practice and qualifying is completely different from race conditions in the fact you have that race pressure, but of course Lemkens and Romano both putting in stellar performances at Watkins Glen, and we'll look forward to seeing how they get on here. Now, earlier I did talk about RD Simsport and a bit of a special event occurring tonight. Well, it is the case. We have the return of RD Simsport's Paul Walton. He will be in the number 98 LMP2 Dallara P217 machine. He'll be racing in the LMP2 AM class at this point in time, although do keep in mind there may be some reclassification of the classes over the course of the opening rounds, although no reclassifications going into tonight, it should be pointed out. But Paul Walton is returning to the series, and we look forward to seeing how he gets on. And for the uninitiated, he did participate in what was the GT3 Championship Season 2 in what was a season-long battle with Gaz Williams for the championship in the GT3 Pro class of, at the time, what was the Coach Dave Academy next door racing lobby, but in the end had to retire towards the end of the season due to personal circumstances. But he put up a brilliant championship campaign, and we look forward to seeing how he gets on here tonight in his debut in this series. We also see going around our circuit right now, he's the only driver who we do, well, in fact we've got a couple more drivers to introduce, and that is we also have Richard Stanton here as the privateer makes his way down the back straight, and he's in the LMP2 class as well, making his debut in the series tonight. And we also have, I believe, a fellow family member, although I'm not sure what the relation is, and that is Jim Stanton here in a like-for-like livery car, so I suspect they're both racing for the same team, although they're listed as privateers at the moment. And we can see both Richard and Jim Stanton taking part as of tonight. We look forward to seeing how they get on in the LMP2 class. We're going to have what is 11 LMP2 class drivers in the field tonight, and indeed it is going to be very fast and furious. And as our drivers all get set for that qualifying round right now, we do see Kurt Van Hoenacker here side by side with Navarro de Bover, I believe there, unless I'm very much mistaken. I believe that is the two teammates running around, going through turns 6 and 7, and they'll be looking to do well within the GT3 AM class. Now, whilst we are waiting, we do say hello to all you guys and girls who are tuning in tonight. We hope you're all doing well on this Thursday evening. And if you are based in the UK, and I think in the majority of the European countries, I do believe that you're likely to be having an extended Easter weekend as of tomorrow, with a 4-day weekend thanks to 2 bank holidays, or at least in the UK it's the case. So I hope you're all set for an extended weekend if you do have that. Or if not, if you've got one more day of work tomorrow, hopefully this will be a nice treat for you in terms of the racing action before we do get to that final day of work, and then the weekend waits around the corner for you. But we say hello in the YouTube chat there to No Mercy NL. We also in the Twitch chat say hello to Arjan Kregel. We've also got that I do believe Navarro over in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, young Navarro, and dear Peter Lemkens as well in the YouTube chat. We've also got there Deborah Grant in the Facebook chat, and we can see Arjan Kregel also appearing in the YouTube chat, and Lucas Romano in the YouTube chat as well. Hello to you all, and if you are tuning in right now and you're feeling a little bit shy, don't be shy. Feel free to say hi. We don't bite here at NXTGEN Racing. Our drivers may on circuit because of the fierce action, but we definitely do not bite in terms of our broadcast and making everybody feel as welcome as they possibly can, as our drivers will now be making their way out onto the circuit, and indeed Road Atlanta will be welcoming our drivers in terms of the pace they're now going to deploy in this qualifying session. Now, we'll have to see how qualifying goes. What are our big talking points? Well, we are expecting, in terms of our LMP class drivers, we are expecting somewhere in the region of the 1 minute 10s to 1 minute 9s in order for them to be up there in terms of laps. So we do see there Liam Tack deciding to take a bit of a rally cross line out of turn at number 3 and into 4. And goodness me, having to hold on the brakes there just a little bit did the TGC Racing drivers. We did see there come charging on through. That was Lucas Romano who came through like an absolute bullet down the hill, and he's wasting no time in getting himself out onto the circuit. As we see all the drivers coming on around, but we do know that with regards to the LMPs, it's around a 109 or 110. That's going to be in the region of pole or up there in terms of times. And meanwhile, in the GT3 class, if our memory serves us correctly, it's somewhere in the region of around a 117, which is going to be a good lap around here. Of course, the challenge for all of our drivers will be finding that space out on the circuit where they can put in the lap. Because the problem with Road Atlanta, and particularly in the first half of the lap, there's very little room when you come up behind another driver, particularly if you're in one of the LMP class machines. But right now, we ride on board with Paul Walton as he takes us around for his opening flying lap here at Road Atlanta, coming into turn number 1, then flicking the car into the right-hander at turn 1. A little bit wide of apex there, but settles the car nice on the exit curb before charging over the crest into the left-hander at 2, before braking into 3, and now coming down through 4. They're taking a bit too much apex curve initially for 4, so he had to lift off the throttle slightly, but now coming flat out down through the S's, making its way into turn number 5 here. Heavy braking zone, it's a bit of a deceptive one, and making its way onto that exit curve, taking it at a gentle angle not to upset the rear of the car, and now making its way down into turn number 6. Breaking his way into the right hand here. Well, the slightest course, of course, the 2 right-handers back to back, and now into turn 7. He wants to get on the power as soon as possible here, so he gets the maximum possible exit speed in the long run down the back straight, where all of our drivers will be reaching their top speeds, and as they make their way down here, of course, it's a time for a breather, but also to get ready for the absolute ride that is the downhill braking zone into the turn 10 chicane. He makes his way through 9, and now here's the dip as he makes his way into that braking zone, sighting his brake mark at the 100-metre ball on the right-hand side, and coming through the chicane as rapidly as possible in second gear, accelerating out there over the blind apex to turn number 11, over the crest, and now down into turn number 12 here. It's a very fast and furious lap here for Paul Walton. What's it going to be to set the pace? It is a 1:10.416, a good opening lap to be fair, and now we'll have to wait and see what other laps come on through, as we've got plenty more laps on the board. Of course, we are only 2.5 minutes into this qualifying session, and we have a grand total of 20 minutes, as we do see, meanwhile, Mark Arrowsmith here in the GT3 AM class, making his way around in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, and of course in that very Valentino Rossi inspired livery there. If you're wondering what VR46 means on the car, that is of course Valentino Rossi's number. And well, for those of you who tune into the Fanatec GT World Challenge, you will have seen the Team WRT number 46 car, and that's because Valentino Rossi is racing for Team WRT, and of course that has brought a lot of publicity to the GT World Challenge Championship, and indeed it's worked out for both motorcycle and also GT3 class racing. But we focus here now on our GT3 drivers, and Mark Arrowsmith there putting his opening lap in a 1:20.0. Not quite up there in terms of the overall pace, but we are expecting that pace to come on as the rubber gets laid down and track temperature improves, plus tyre temperature improves. He may be running a bit of fuel as well in the car at the moment, just trying to sight himself in terms of where the lap time is, where it's not, and build himself up. And that's the nice thing about this 20-minute qualifying session. You have a lot of time to play with here. Of course, the downside is that with that greater amount of time, all your rivals have the opportunity to improve. but if you can find that pace as the time goes on, it can work out. And also it means there's a bit less pressure in terms of finding that space on circuit immediately. Although I can tell you right now for Aaron Smith, it's not going to be too long before he does have an army of LMP cars coming up behind him, and well, he will not have Paul Williams coming up behind him, because Paul Williams here, the Team Tetra Rouge driver, as he makes his way up through turn number 1 and into turn 3, is at the complete opposite side of the circuit by comparison, as he rolls on down through turn number 4. And as he comes on down here, of course, Paul Williams currently provisional P6 overall, P6 in the LMP2 class as well, and we'll wait to see what he's able to achieve here as he comes roaring out of turn number 5. He's got a little bit of traffic ahead. That's Lambert Wedder, I believe, at the Team Racing Netherlands Lamborghini Huracan, and well, actually no, that's why the Racing Team Astro Machines might. Sincere apologies there as they make their way out the corner, and well, Paul Williams has picked the traffic at the worst possible time, and that is going to hurt his lap massively as he now has to get back up to speed. And in fact, that's Sean Scooter just in front of him. To be fair, Scooter's allowed to take that line. He does not have to move out of the way for the LMP class cars. It is the case, of course, he's got to show awareness and respect of an LMP being behind him, but he doesn't have to immediately dart out of the way as if it was blue flags in a light-for-light class. And as we see here, Paul Williams will now have to try and rebuild that lap as we are hearing that Sean Scooter has jumped. Well, that is not Scooter, my apologies. Getting our RTA drivers mixed up. That was, well, it wasn't even Davide Favo. Yeah, I think it was Lorenzo Gualtieri. In fact, it was Gualtieri, and there we go. We'll get it right eventually. We'll pick off the list one by one. But Gualtieri here as he crosses the line at 119.1. And Gualtieri really the driver who shone the most, of course, at Watkins Glen, the GT3 AM class. And a lot of drivers within the class are amazed at lap times. And well, right now, it is the case. He's not the #1 man in the GT3 Pro class as he makes his way around. That is Navarro de Bova. And well, Navarro de Bova, the Belgian driver here, making his way around. And he's got tucked in behind him. I do believe that is one of the challenged by DB1 machines. And I do wonder whether that is his father behind him, of Jeremy de Bova here, giving him a little bit of a spur on and saying, look, I'm catching you, son. You need to go a bit faster. But regardless, as we see there in the Twitch chat, Supreme World asking, what track is this? Well, you're looking at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, the absolute roller coaster of a circuit in the state of Georgia in the United States of America, as our drivers make the way around it in this qualifying session. It's great to have you with us as well, Supreme World. Great to have you tuning in, as we also say hello in the YouTube chat there to Paul, and I believe that is Paul Walton there. Open qualifying being terrifying, and indeed for all of our drivers, it is a terrifying prospect, and one I think they are acclimatising to. But do keep in mind, of course, that the open qualifying is still being analysed by our organisers, and feedback from our drivers is being taken on board, and a decision is going to be made, as I understand it, after round number 3 as to whether open qualifying will continue or whether we will see split qualifying, whereby our LMP class drivers will be given a 10-minute window to set their laps, and then they will hand over to the GT3 drivers for their 10-minute window, or vice versa. We'll have to wait and see which way the decision goes, but either way, it will mean that qualifying will be interesting regardless, because of course in split qualifying it restricts our drivers' timeouts on circuit, and it means they've got less time to deliver that all-important lap. The flip side of the coin, of course, as we said earlier, in open qualifying like this, you need to pick the right time to give yourself the space on circuit to set that ultimate lap, but you do have more time to set the lap, of course, so it has its advantages and disadvantages. Now as Liam Tack makes his way around here, his current fastest lap being a 1:20.5, which puts him P7 in the GT3 AM class and P22 overall. And of course, Liam Tack here, a developing driver in TGC Racing, taking him on board the team. Last time out, if I remember correctly, in the GT3 Championship Season 2, he was racing as a privateer or an independent, however you want to call it, but in an absolutely beautiful Williams racing livery at the time. But he's joined Team TGC for this season, and to be fair, TGC are taking him on with open arms and great relationship down the garage, and I think Tack is enjoying the experience, as he'll have some rather dark memories of Road Atlanta. For anybody who wants a recollection, you need to take a look back at the start of the feature race at Road Atlanta in the GT3 Championship Season 2, where unfortunately for Liam Tack, as he was making his way out to the final corner on the manual double file rolling start, and they were building up to speed, the rear end of his Ferrari came loose. I believe it was Tack. If I'm wrong about it and Tack's listening in right now, I do apologise, Liam, but I swear it was the Williams Ferrari that you were driving, but I could be wrong. And I think there, let's go down memory lane. I do apologise, Tack Ali. That's Liam Tack in the Twitch chat. It's great to see you tuning in, and well, I hope you're doing well, my good friend, as right now P24 overall. But meanwhile, we do a look from our GT3 driver up to Michael Price here, and of course we heard from the Excite Racing driver in a post-race interview or post-round interview last time out, What was the Watkins Glen? He enjoyed the racing, of course. It was a very mixed fortunes race in the feature race for a lot of our LMP2 drivers. A big question around fuel and the extra pit stop. Some drivers making it on a single stop, and they were towards the front of the field, whereas our drivers who finished in the midfield had to make that second stop. And I think Price did learn the experience of that season opener, and now looking to go even further tonight. Currently P5, he is 6/10 off of Jim Stanton, who's in P4 right now in the same class. And well, I think Price here, he'll take that P5, but he'll want to go a little bit higher if he can. And to be fair, talking about deltas, so we see Paul Scott there setting his opening lap of the session, going up into P7 does Paul Scott, as we look at Michael Price here, coming towards the end of a lap, and he does have a little bit of traffic in the form of Kurt Van Hoenacker there, who he cuts up the inside coming out turn number 11, which is allowed to do so. Of course, he's got the aerodynamics to do so, but he does not improve. Van Hoenacker does improve, however, but the Belgian driver there, only P22 overall, that's P4 in the GT3 AM class, and quite a way off his teammates right now, and particularly his teammate being Navarro de Bova. They're both racing for the Challenge by DB2 outfit, whereas it is the case that Jeremy de Bova and Didi Lemkens racing for the Challenge by DB1 outfit in the GT3 Pro class. But speaking of pros, well, it was the case that he was taking the fight to the pros in season 2 of the GT3 Championship, but he switched to the LMP class for this season, and we can see here that Stefan Wessels here, the South African driver, the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, currently P3 and finding the face full of traffic here as he makes his way down through the S's, and well, that P3 looking good. He is just shy of 3/10 off of Jim Stanton right now in that P3 position. Jim Stanton P2 and almost 5/10 off of Paul Walton, but you can imagine that Wessels, well, acclimatised into the LMP2 class car, and well, he started off this season in the LMP2 class car, having not driven it before in iRacing, and it was the case that he's relatively new to iRacing. The last season we saw in him was his first experience in iRacing, as I was informed, and well, Wessels making that transition from what was Gran Turismo Sport, and also sets of course the competition in absolutely brilliant style here as he makes his way down the back straight and enjoying this machine. I can tell you that right now, because when Stefan Wessels is in the groove, it is the case he absolutely loves it, and as he makes his way through turn number 10 right now, looking very strong indeed. As he comes on down, he pulls into the pits, going to put some more fuel in the car, or perhaps some fresh rubber on the car. But we can see here is the case that Sam Holman, meanwhile, currently in P8 in the LMP class, and looking to try and improve as he makes his way on through. And that lap wasn't improved. He is still P7, but 1:11.284 now. In case it was a situation whereby he was looking to close that gap to Paul Scott, he's done it to a degree. He's now only half a tenth of Paul Scott, who's in P6. But we did earlier bring you an onboard with our drivers making their way around in the LMP class machine. That was Paul Walton, and now we are going to try and bring you an onboard with one of our GT3 class drivers, and we'll be jumping on board with Arjan Kregel here from the Team Racing Netherlands outfit as he makes his way across the timeline onto another lap here in the Ferrari 488. Coming into turn 1 here, the thing you'll notice the difference is the amount of speed he can carry through the corners. He's got less downforce on the car and a bit more weight as he makes his way through one over the blind crest of 2, and it's the braking zone of 3 here, looking very smooth as he comes through 3 and down into 4 now. Now it's all about balancing the front as he makes his way through the S's and using the width of the circuit to turn through. Nice run there through the S's. Now coming into turn 5, you can see it braking into the apex and then using that exit curve. They're taking a gentle attack angle for the exit curve as we do see Mark Arrowsmith off circuit. I believe that was Arrowsmith in the wall on the right side, but we stay on board here with Kregel as he comes through turn number 6 here. And the Ferrari, we are expecting to go relatively strong at this circuit because of its handling characteristics and also its good acceleration and its top speed. If it's in the slipstream, its 6th gear does pick up a lot of speed, but it loses speed when it hasn't got slipstream. And as he makes his way down the back straight here, it will be the case. It will start to feel that pinch in the gearbox. He goes up into 5th. You can see the dashboard there on the left-hand side of the onboard. And as he makes his way down, in fact, not finding 6th gear, the straight not long enough. And as he finds 6th gear right at the end of it, as he brakes into the turn 10 chicane here, you can see just a little bit more apex curve than he perhaps needed initially, but he's smoothly over 11. Now down into turn number 12 here. It's a good lap from Arjan Kregel. What's it going to be as he crosses that timeline? And it is going to be a 1:19.174. And that is P3 in the GT3 AM class, P18 overall here, and that puts him very close to Navarro de Bova's time, and he is now only a 10th off of Navarro de Bova. But right now, Lorenzo Gualtieri, currently the fastest in the GT3 AM class. It is a back-and-forth battle between Gualtieri and Navarro de Bova with regards to that pole position, and as Gualtieri comes across the line there, he does not improve that time, but the Lamborghini Huracan driver looking to go even faster. He is right now 1/10 of a second faster than Navarro de Bova. We will have to wait and see. As meanwhile, other cars to watch out for today, as I believe we have got a driver going a bit roll. Well, I say that, and then Gualtieri decides to straight line his way across turn number 3 into 4. But we do look to Peter Lemkens here, who is currently P2 in the GT3 Pro class, provisional, and Dirk Bounce, meanwhile, is currently your provisional pole driver in the GT3 Pros, as we see him here making his way around in the Mercedes AMG. And we are expecting the Mercedes AMG to be quite a good car here at Road Atlanta. Its strengths are it's a very stable machine. It's got very good electronics on the car, but the downsides, of course, of this machine is the fact that because it's got such a pointy nose, you can imagine, yep, that's a massive V8 engine in the front of the car, and that does mean it's very prone to understeer. And in turn, in the opening half of the lap, particularly the run down through turns at 3 and 4 into the S's and up towards turn 5, this car can feel like a bit of a boat to turn through the corners. The difference, however, is the fact that when it goes on those apex curves, it's not going to unsettle as easily as, say, the Ferrari 488 or an Audi R8, for the simple reason its centre of mass is located more towards the front, and therefore the rear of the cars are not as likely to come around as aggressively, because the front settles the car down and our drivers can be a bit more aggressive with those curbs. But right now, Dirk Bounce making his way down through the drop of 11 into 12 here, and as he comes across the line, does he improve? No, he does not improve from his previous best of what is 1:18.65. As he comes on through here, we should also keep in mind the Mercedes can be quite fast on the straights, and we'll have to wait and see how Bounce makes it work. As meanwhile, in the hunt for the overall pole position in the LMP class position, it is the case that Paul Walton's still the fastest by a sizable margin there. A 109.970 is now the bar that our drivers have got to beat, and well, Walton just trying to put that pole position out of everybody's reach, and he's doing so in an admirable case right now, as he does have a 5.5 tenth advantage to P2 man of Jim Stanton here, as he makes his way in the 777 machine through what is turn number, well, we're just trying to figure out the corner. That was turn 6 into 7 there, as we get used to our camera angles, but he backs off, I believe, to let one Dirk Bounce come on through, as Stefan Vessels dethrones Jim Stanton from P2, and it is the case the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, a 1:10.417. The rivalry between the two of them, I suspect, is not just going to be in qualifying. They're separated by a tenth, and they are both looking very fast, as we see their Vessels decides to take a traffic cone with him for good measure, as he makes his way down out of turn 4 and in through the S's and up to 5. As he rolls on through the corners right now, we have 4 minutes as qualifying session to go before the checkered flag comes on out. I can tell you that we do have quite a few GT3 drivers in the pits. Jack Whyborn has yet to put a lap time in. It does sound as though the LMP2 class driver's leaving it to the last moment. Alternatively, he's going to be starting from the back of the field if they can't get the car out for the purposes of this qualifying session. But meanwhile, right at the back of the field with a classified lap time is Davide Favo, as he makes his way around turn 6 and into 7 here, and it's just not working out for Favo right now. He is the best. Oh, goodness me, as he spins there at turn number 7, runs a bit wide, puts the rear left-hand tyre up onto that exit curve, onto the grass, and it turns the car completely. But Favo right now, almost 7 attempts off of a Liam Tack, and he's going to have to find some pace out on the circuit if he wants to get a bit higher up the order. But of course, some circuits not favouring drivers compared to others, as we do look to what is Jeremy DeBover here, as he makes his way down the back straight. Now, in the build-up to tonight, I did have the opportunity to catch up with a couple of our drivers as they were making their way into the car. And in fact, it was only really one driver who had the main chance to catch up with, and that was Arjan Kregel, who had the opportunity, as we do see him currently parked in the pits. Kregel was saying he was hoping to get P1 tonight in what I believe in the race. We'll have to wait and see. And also, I did have a brief chance to catch up with Liam Tack, who I do believe is not in the pit lane right now. I think it might be the case that they pulled the car off circuit. But he did, instead of giving me a pre-race thoughts, he decided to give me a little bit of a question or a riddle, which is, why do we park on driveways but drive on parkways? Well, that's a question which, if you guys and girls looking for a question to take to bed tonight, that might be one that will keep you up during the night. As well, I haven't put too much thought into it right now, because we're putting the thought in to the racing here. But as our drivers continue to make their way on through, it is the case, with the time coming down, 2.5 minutes remaining here. Aaron Smith down in P26, that is a P8 in the GT3 AM class. Now it's all about getting those best possible laps in, and we'll wait and see what our drivers are able to do with limited time remaining. And looking up towards the LMP class, I can definitely tell you that right now, well, Paul Scott and Sam Holman, they are battling for that P6 position in this qualifying session, separated by only half a tenth, and it is still Paul Scott who holds that P6 for Next Gen Racing here as he makes his way down through the S's and roars on up towards what's turn 5. Paul Walton, by the way, has raised the fastest lap in the class and indeed the qualifying session to a 109.712. He's now got a 7/10 of a second advantage over Stefan Wessels. I do think that Paul Walton may be looking to make a statement and run away with the sprint race. We'll wait and find out, of course, when we do go racing in a short while, but Paul Walton right now looking very strong as we're looking at Paul Scott here as he makes his way down the back straight up towards turn number 10. As he makes his way down here, of course, and in towards the dip, the very cagey braking zone where you essentially brake downhill and the bottom of the car scrapes on the ground briefly under braking, and as he makes his way through the chicane, here's one of those situations where I think for Scott, he'll be just simply thinking about what can he do given this qualifying position. He is 5.5 tenths off of Paul Williams, so it does seem as though we have a gulf between our drivers, and he crossed the line there. He improves. He's now 3.5 tenths off of Paul Williams on a 1:11 flat, and he'll have one more lap as he goes a bit wider the turn 1 apex, and he's got a lot of traffic uphill. I think Scott might be backing it off. But talking about close lap times right now, what if I was to tell you that Michael Price, who we see here, is literally a dead heat, a 1:10.53 to Jim Stanton, who's also parked in the pit. It's by the 10,000ths of a second that Stanton is ahead of Price. That's how close the two of them are as this qualifying session is coming to a close, and Stanton only 1/10 of Stefan Wessels, but Wessels will definitely have P2 in the LMP2 class in this qualifying session now. There's no question about that, with Stanton, Price and Williams all parked up in the pit lane, and Paul Scott a sizable way off the pace of Wessels. But meanwhile, in the hunt for pole position in the GT3 classes, I can tell you that it is Lucas Romano right now who is currently our provisional pole man in the GT3 Pro class, and it looks like Gualtieri is our provisional our provisional pole in the GT3 AM class, although he's not quite on circuit at the moment, as we do see their dirt bounce parking up and the checkered flag is out. So it is time for our drivers to come to the end of those laps. But I can tell you as well, ladies and gentlemen, that our lap time board on the left hand side does not take into account drivers who may have picked up track limit invalidations over the course of their qualifying lap, as we see Elwin Sykes there parking up and calling it a day in qualifying. So we may see some of those qualifying times change or some of those positions change when we do form the grid for the sprint race. So it's not 100% fixed. We will confirm that grid when we start to go through the grid. And we see Aaron Smith completing his qualifying session and Kurt Van Hernacker here doing the same. I think they've both pretty much crossed the line. I don't think anybody's on a lap right now other than potentially James Slade, as we see him here making his way down what is the back straight in the Audi R8. One of a limited number of Audi drivers in Lobby 2, to be fair. We've only got James Slade and also a Mark Sykesbury in the Audi R8, and the reason for that, simply put, the Audi R8 is considered to be a very difficult beast to tame, because when it's in its element, it's a very fast GT3, but it's so sensitive to precise driving in terms of steering lock, in terms of tyre management, in terms of rear stabilisation on corner exit, and that's what makes it such a hard car to drive. As we see Slate's coming down here and he decides to box, he's not happy with that lap as he brings it on in. I think he was just outside of the permitted time in the qualifying session to go for one more lap. So in the end, as we come to the end of this qualifying session, it is the case that we can see there, subject to confirmation, Paul Walton is your overall pole position and LMP AM class pole by 7/10 on a 109.712, and there is Lucas Romano who's taken pole in the GT3 Pro class on a 118.313 by 3/10 over dirt bounce, and in the GT3 AM class it is Gualtieri, we believe, on a 118.963, 1/10 faster than Navarro de Bova, as we now get ready for forming the grid here and going into that sprint race. Let's take you through the grid orders, ladies and gentlemen, for the purposes of our opening race of tonight. So our grid lines up as follows. We can see on pole position there, Paul Walton in the end in the number 98 car on his debut in this series tonight, out qualifying Stefan Wessels by 7/10 of a second. Walton definitely making a very strong claim in terms of pace, and I do wonder whether some of our organisers will be looking at him thinking, could he be promoted to the Pro class, depending on how he performs in the races tonight. Behind those two, however, is Michael Price for iRacing, followed by Jim Stanton in P4 there, and it is the case the two of them separated by only 4,000ths of a second in the end. That's how close it was when the times were confirmed. Meanwhile, on the third row, Paul Williams from Team Tetra Rouge, and alongside him Paul Scott from Next Gen Racing. They line up on row number 3. Sam Holman and Mark Baker make up row at number 4, with the Hollerton Racing driver out qualifying the Team Tetra Rouge driver by a significant margin of what was almost 6/10 of a second. Richard Stanton and Baz Meacham complete our LMP2 class grid there, P9, P10 on that 5th row respectively, the BRM driver being the last but not least of our LMP2 drivers. Then we have Lucas Romano, who starts off the GT3 GT3 class there, P11. He is our pole position driver for the GT3s and GT3 Pro. The RP Motorsport Pro-Am driver out-qualifying his teammate Peter Lemkens in the end by almost 5/10 of a second. My goodness me, what a gap between the two of them, and a reversal of the roles. Then behind them, it is the case that we do have DD Blaming, who starts off at row number 7, and alongside him is his challenged by DB teammate of Jeremy DeBova. The two teammates line up together on row number 7, and then we have Dirt Bounce from RP Motorsport Senior, and he starts off row number 8 with Navarro DeBova taking pole position. It is confirmed Navarro DeBova taking pole position from a challenge by DB2 there in P16 in the GT3 AM class. Lorenzo Gualtieri not far behind him, out qualified in the end by only 15 thousandths of a second. That shows how close it was between the challenge and Racing Team Astra driver. But the Racing Team Astra Orange driver qualifying in P17, and he is joined by Lammert Wedder on the 9th row. And then we have on the 10th row there Arjan Kregel for Team Racing Netherlands, and alongside him Tristan Dino Brega for Racing Team Astra Blue. James Slates and Gus Rankin make up our 11th row, the two RP Motorsport drivers, the Pro-Am driver qualifying ahead of the senior outfit driver, and then we see Sean Scooter line up P23, and alongside him Kurt Van Hoornacker on row at number 12 in P24 for them changed by DB2 team. And we can see the Racing Team Astra Blue driver there having a difficult qualifying session, and he will need to try and come on strong in the race. As meanwhile Mark Sykes lines up P25 for NXTGEN Racing with Sam Cases UK, and he is joined on the 13th row by Mark Arrowsmith, the privateer, in P26. Racing Team Astra Orange's Elwin Sykes there in P27, starting off our 14th row, and the GT3 AM driver is joined by Liam Tack from TGC Racing. And then our final row, our final qualifying position went to Davide Favo in P29 there for Racing Team Astra Orange, and he is joined by Jack Whyborn from the MRC team, and I do believe that Jack Whyborn is going to be starting from the very back of the field, and he'll need to find his way all the way through our drivers. And we'll have to wait and see what he can achieve over the course of the proceedings. But we look now to our drivers, to our pack, as they make the way on around, and they're heading up towards turn number 6 at this point, behind the safety car on this manual double file formation lap. Indeed, our rolling start will be commencing following this lap, and as our drivers make their way around right now, we do look to the blimp here, and well, can Paul Walton get the good start he wants and make that early break as he literally hugs the back of the safety car? They're trying to get the message through to the safety car to get a move on, and well, I think Vessels will be thinking about, can he hound Paul Walton on the opening lap, or does he just focus on trying to hold on to P2 and simply pick up some huge points here? We'll have to wait and see. As meanwhile, a bit further back there we can see Holman, and well, he'll be looking to battle with Paul Scott and Mark Baker going into the opening corners and wanting to beat Paul Scott in particular. Meanwhile, a bit further down the road we can see that our GT3 drivers are now lining up 2 seconds back off of the LMP class drivers, and we can see it is the case that Lucas Romano there and also Peter Lemkens, his teammates, sharing that space together as they make the way on down the back straight and looking to go racing the pair of them. But I'm sure the two teammates will have worked out not to fight one another too fiercely on the opening laps, because they'll want to make a breakaway from DD Blaming and Jeremy DeBova. Further down in the midfield of the GT3s, we see Kurt Van Hoornacker there in what is that P23 position, and in the end qualifying P6 in class, and he's got quite some work to do to chase down his teammate, but we must look from them up towards the front of the field right now as we do see our LMPs come through the final corners. It's to Paul Walton to take us away. And it's lights out, away we go here for the sprint race at Road Atlanta. Race 1 or 2 as Paul Walton gets a good start as they make their way down into the opening corner. He goes onto the race line. Michael Price looking up the inside as Jim Stanton gets a hold of P3 as they come charging up the hill, and Price in has to go defensive as they come on through and make their way over the crest. All of our drivers in the LMP car safely making it through, but Paul Williams here battling side by side with one at Richard Stanton as they come down, and Williams losing place and drops to the back of the LMP class field as they all make their way through. Meanwhile, in the GT3 class, I can tell you that Lucas Romano getting a good start as they all come flying on through here in quick succession. But I say that, and well, it does look as though here we do have a 3-wide bow, as we can see that Mark Baker around the outside of both Holman and also Paul Scott, as Holman does the reverse Moses alongside Baker versus Paul Scott, and Paul Scott there literally losing 2 places in one corner, but Holman locking up there, and Paul Scott's going to have the opportunity as they make their way side by side down the back straight, but Scott backs out here, and now he's looking again as they make their way roaring on down. It's a long straight, and these LMP2 class cars do pick up a huge amount of slipstream, and we can see the overspeed there for Baz Meacham, who's looking up the inside of Paul Scott, and under braking he's going to go deep on the brakes. Here he looks at the double pass here, does the Welshman, and well, the BRM driver almost gets the 2, but in the end he only gets 1, and is he even going to get Paul Scott? I don't think so, because Paul Scott's on the inside line as they make the way down through turn 12, and as they do, Paul Scott holds on for the time being. Meanwhile, looking further back, it is the case, well, we were going to look back, we can see Paul Williams here having to worry about Richard Stanton, who's trying to come on through, but now as we do look back, I can tell tell you that Jack Whyborn right now, well, I believe Whyborn cutting his way through the GT3 drivers here at a very rapid rate, and obviously he's already up to P20. He's got a long way to go though if he wants to get up with his LMP class peers, and he hasn't got long. He's only got 15 minutes to do it as he makes his way past there. One Arjen Kregel takes and gives him a bit of space as they make the way through. I think Paul Scott's had a moment on circuit, and Paul Scott has had an off, and we haven't quite seen him. I can tell you he's jumped to the pits, and Paul Scott, I think with that is going to put him right to the back, and whether he can get the car back out or not, that's another question. We see Gus Franken here. Gus Franken having made a good start. He's gained 3 places already, and he's up to P19 overall. That's P6 in the GT3 Pro class, as we see behind there. Kurt Van Hoenacker defending versus James Slate, so has to back off very heavily. And Slate's now, he's got up his inside. That's Sean Scooter, the GT3 Pro drive, coming past the AM as they make the way out of the corner. And well, with that, we can see that Slate's and Aerosmith now in a bit of a building battle here. The 2 AM drivers as they make their way down, but this is where Aerosmith needs the toe for that Ferrari to excel in its top gears. And well, we can see that Slate's meanwhile literally blocking off in the middle of the road as they come down towards the braking zone here. And what he's trying to do, oh goodness me, and there's major contact with Sean Scooter there, and Scooter is sent rolling down the road. And well, you can see everybody bunching up there trying to avoid the wayward Lamborghini Huracan, and it looks like Mark Sykes sends it over his roof there of a brief tap, but Sean Scooter in the end, my goodness, that contact between him and Slate, and I think that has ended Scooter's race, no doubt. And Mark Sykes now, of course, with a slightly damaged Audi R8, they did manage to plink the Lamborghini Huracan over the top of him, and as they make the way into another lap here, you can see some flashing lights from Liam Tack behind there, and I wonder where Liam Tack is trying to get into Mark Sykes' head as they make the way up the hill and in towards turn number 2 once again. As they come rolling on through here, in terms of big changes, I can tell you that Baz Meacham has jumped to the pits as well. What I do wonder what's happened to Baz Meacham. I think technical issues with the car. We have had another LMP2 class driver retire then, or at least make their way to the pits. We'll wait and see if they can come back out. But meanwhile, we do look up further up the road here, and we can see that Jeremy DeBova, well, he's made some initial ground, and now as Jack Whyborn forces his way through in the LMP machine, DeBova's looking at Peter Lemkens here, and whether he can get past the Ferrari drivers. They make the way down towards the dip, in towards turn number 10, but behind them, you can see Dirt Bounce battling with Didi Verlaming. The 2 drivers, of course, in equal machinery, both in the Mercedes AMG, and as they come down, it's Verlaming on the inside, Bounce trying to go around the outside, and Verlaming has to go deep under braking, and he does go overly deep. That's going to cost him very majorly as they make the way through, and as they come over the rise, we ride on board here with Verlaming looking back from the rear of the Mercedes into the front grille of what is Dirt Bounce as they come across that timing line, and on to another lap they go, and as they make the way into the opening corner here, we bring the battle box up in the bottom right hand corner of your screen for your viewing pleasure, and as they make the way up the hill now through turn 1 into turn number 2, Verlaming under major pressure with Dirt Bounce all over the back of him. But with all this happening, what I can tell you is that a bit further back, just behind him in fact, excuse me, is Navarro DeBova, and DeBova right now, the younger member of the DeBova family, is hanging with these drivers. And the GT3 AM driver has got a 5.3 second advantage over second place man in the GT3 AM class, and that is Lorenzo Gualtieri. And well, Gualtieri has had a difficult start to this race. He hasn't quite been there on the pace compared to Navarro DeBova, and that is showing the difference there with the gap that's opened up. And well, he has got a bit of pressure of Mark Aerosmith and Kurt Van Hoenacker, who are giving close pursuit as they roll on through turn 6 and 7 and make the way down this back straight once again. But as they come on down right now, we do look to Elwin Sykes, who is under a bit of pressure from James Slates here, and in return is losing some time to Liam Tack as the McLaren MP4 12C driver for Racing Team Astra Orange. He's trying to find a way to hunt down Liam Tack, and James Slates there with the mangled front end of that Audi R8 due to the contact earlier on with Sean Scooter. Well, Scooter has had to jump to the pits. Paul Scott has come out of the pits, I should point out, and he's now back out on circuit, but Baz Meacham and Sean Scooter both in the pits to take a look at the car and repair works to the car, definitely for Sean Scooter. And Baz Meacham, we're just hearing that he's had to jump to the pits due to a technical issue. We're not sure if they'll be able to get that car back out on circuits. Remember, no fast repairs in this sprint race. It is the case they will have the maximum repair time to do the repair work on the car. And as we see Elwin Sykes going to go slightly defensive down for 11 into 12. He's got building pressure as James Slate swings to the inside as they go into another lap here. He's going to look for the move, and as they make the way into the braking zone, is he going to go for it fully? Slates does go for it. Elwin Sykes there gives him the space, and James Slates gains a position as we are hearing that Lambert Weather's had a little bit of an off track further up the road. He's brought the car back, and Slates loses the rear end there, and well, the race is going from good to bad to worse for the RP Motorsport Motorsport Pro-Am driver, and he'll be kicking himself for that error. And I think it might be the damage to the car that's unsettled it some, as we see. Meanwhile, Dirt Bounce here, the Belgian driver battling with his fellow countryman DDD blaming. They've been like this for some time, and again side by side down this back straight, and you can see behind them then Navarro de Boer just watching innocently, and I think egging on what is DDD blaming to say to him, hold him off, as they make their way into the braking zone. And Dirt Bounce trying to compress DDD blaming into the apex there, and Blaming saying, well, if you want to get your elbows out, I'll do the same as well. And Navarro de Boer coming up to the back of Dirt Bounce, and Una of tap on the rear, and you can see the flashing lights there at Dirt Bounce. He's not happy with that. He would argue that that was a little bit uncalled for, and I think DDD Blaming would say, well, where would you want me to go? You compressed me to the apex. What else am I meant to do? And I think the stewards may take a little bit of a look and frown at that one for the pair of them. I think they could have navigated that one with a little bit less contact, but all the same, it is racing at the end of the day, and we can see that Arjen Kregel here, meanwhile, looking to go racing versus Tristan Di Nobrega as he looks up the inside into turn one. This is the battle for his P20 overall, P5 in the GT3 AM class, and Mark Sykes right behind the two of them. Kregel gets ahead, and now as they make their way into turn two, Nobrega's going to look around the outside into three, can't find it. And meanwhile, they make their way down the hill. There's contact there, and Arjen Kregel, Luke, well, I think there was contact, or where he just got unsettled on the grass. One of the two, I think it was a combination of both, in fact. But Kregel, with a tiny little moment there, loses both places as he makes his way through the S's, and he won't be too pleased with that. But I'm sure he'll dig deep with only half of the sprint race complete, and there's still plenty of time out there if he wants to pick up results. But meanwhile, with all that, Mark Sykes soldiering on here, and Mark Sykes in P6 in class right now as he makes his way on around. But Mark Baker, meanwhile, going from one mark to another. That's Mark Baker off circuit there, and I think Mark Baker's had a spin coming out of, I believe that's the run up towards turn number 6. He's had a spin coming out turn 5, I'm hearing in my ear, and has dropped all the way down to P8 in class as Jack Whyborn into the pits. Now, Whyborn into the pits here, I think with a technical issue of some description, or it's the case where it's a very short pit stop. I'm wondering if that's a penalty perhaps, but it's all gone a bit wrong there for Whyborn, as meanwhile as he makes his way out of the pit lane. It is the case that we look back to the racing out on circuit, and Richard Stanton here hunting down Mark Baker, and well, Stanton's just had an off, I'm hearing in my ear, he's had an off at turn number 7, and that's why he's behind Baker, so he'll be looking to try and get that place back as soon as possible. But meanwhile, much closer together out on circuit, battling for what is P4 in the LMP class. We're looking at Sam Holman from Hollerton Racing here, and he is hunting after Michael Price as they make their way down through into the S's. Now as we ride on board here with Holman as he comes on through, there's some traffic ahead there for Price, and that's Lambert Wedder in the GT3 Pro class Lamborghini Huracan. And to be fair, this is where you don't want to catch that traffic through the S's because it's so tight, you can't find a way on through. And as they make their way down here towards turn number 6, it is the case, well, it's worked out for Holman very nicely because he's got very close now to the back of his rival. And as they make their way through turn number 7, there's plenty of traffic ahead. You can see just up the road to them, in fact, that is, I believe, well, I think that's one of our 11P cars that lost out earlier on that's also trying to find its way on through. That's not Stefan Vessels. Vessels is 5 seconds up the road, but Holman here in the slipstream. He's looking for the move on Price. Will he have enough room on the inside? He looks for it. He dares to dream, and under braking he goes. He's going to be on the inside there, and he goes in deep as we see a lock up there for Michael Price. And I believe that's Mark Sykes who's just turned off circuit to avoid contact. And well, in fact, there was contact between the two of them. You can see the left-hand side panel there of Michael Price's car heavily damaged. He's into the pits. I think that's to get the damage repaired, no doubt. But with all that, I can tell you that there's been quite a bit of drama as a result, as now, well, it is the case that Lorenzo Gualtieri up to P16, and we're just trying to figure out what exactly has happened here. I think there has been a bit of an off for a driver or two, but Gualtieri in P16 still, and well, he's chasing after Navarro de Boer, but there's a gap between the two of them of what is 4 seconds, and Navarro de Boer just breaking away, as meanwhile Mark Sykes definitely into the pit lane to have repair work to that Audi. You can see where the front end is damaged, and well, he will not be too happy about that one. And the fact that it was looking very good for a result, and in the end it's gone all sorts of wrong with that contact with Price. But he'll be thinking about the feature race, no doubt, as meanwhile out on circuit, having had that contact earlier on, and now just trying to bring the car to the end to get some points on the board. We can see Baz Meacham here from BRM just soldiering on through and trying to make his way past James Slater, and I think he'll probably do it in the run across the start-finish line into his turn number 1, as we are hearing that Mark Arrowsmith has jumped to the pits with damage to the car. And well, now we are waiting to see where the rest of the battles lie in the remainder of this sprint race with 4 minutes plus the final lap to go. But meanwhile, looking from down towards the back of the field up towards the very front of the field, and he's actually closing, he's making his way through the back of the field right now. Here's Paul Walton from RD Simsport, who, well, an advantage at the moment ahead of Jim Stanton by 6 seconds and gaining continuously here. Walton is in a world of his own as he's soldiering on through here, as he comes down towards turn number 6, and well, I think he's made a statement, which is if qualifying wasn't enough, he's now shown the pace he's got in the sprint race as well, and I think this is Walton's to lose in the LMP class. But meanwhile, talking about a battle growing in the LMP class, we can see here Mark Baker coming up behind his Team Tetra Rouge teammate of what is Paul Williams, as they both make their way out to turn number 5 and down towards turn 6. Now Williams, of course, at this point, he'll know that Baker's coming, and I do wonder whether they'll hold formation, alternatively whether they will do a little bit of sparring towards the end of this. They will not want to make contact with one another because the team need the points at the end of the day as much as the drivers both want the points, and as they make their way down the back straight here, they'll have to think about how they navigate this. I suspect there may be an attempt at a move at some point, particularly with the draft down the back straight here. The draft giving you a good amount of speed in those LMP class cars, picking up something in the region of 5 to 6 miles an hour over your rival if you pick up the toe straight out of turn number 7 and nice and close. But as they make their way out of the corner right now, it does look as though Baker settling in behind Williams for the time being. We'll wait and see. But looking at from them as they come running for that lovely camera shot, of course, off of the curve of turn number 12, as they make their way on down, we do look down into the GT3 class once again to one Arjan Kregel. Well, he had that moment earlier on in the race, and he's still in P4 in the GT3 AM class here with 2.5 minutes to go. He's hunting down one Kurt Van Hoornacker, who is the best part of what is 8.5 seconds up the road from him. And I think it's the case of Kregel just thinking about bringing home what will now be that P4 in class P19 overall. He won't need to do anything magical now in order to get some magical points. He's already got some good points on the board here, assuming he makes it to the checkered flag. Not to bring the commentator's curse on him, but you've got to finish the race to get the points. It's not the case the race stops until the timer and that checkered flag falls. But meanwhile, looking from him to further down the order, well, I can tell you that right now in the GT3s it is the case that Elwin Sykes in P6 in the GT3 AM class. Hold up a second. Oh, goodness me. What on earth has happened here? Well, Kurt Van Hoornacker's had a moment, and that's at turn number 7, and we're hearing that Gus Franken's also had something go horribly wrong. Well, whatever has happened to Gus Franken, I think there may have been some contact perhaps between Franken and Kurt Van Hoornacker. I'm only going to surmise, unfortunately, we can't take a look back at replays because of the limitations of post-race broadcasting, but I'm hearing in my ear that the two of them did come together around the same time at turn number 7. I think there was contact between the two of them, and well, at the end of the day, the GT3 AM driver of Van Hoornacker and the GT3 Pro driver of Gus Franken have had a moment, and well, they've both dropped down the order quite considerably, with the fact that Arjan Kregel is now up into P3 in the GT3 AM class at the expense of Van Hoornacker going down to P4, and well, Gus Franken has dropped to P6 in the GT3 Pro class at the expense of DDD Belayment gaining the position. But meanwhile, as they make the way on through, we talk about our drivers in the GT3 Pro class, and we can see here it is the case that Bounce closing up on the rear of Jeremy DeBover here with 1 minute to go. They've got one more lap after this, and well, it is one of situations whereby both of them in the Mercedes, and of course in the German machinery, as they make their way down the back straight, it's all about the slipstream and also how the driver masters the car, because they're in equal machinery at the end of the day. As you can see, they're the two Team Tetra Rouge LMPs coming through down the outside line here, and well, that gives an opportunity to Jeremy DeBover to hold the line as they make their way through the corner. But meanwhile, we're hearing that Paul Scott has had another incident as Paul Scott turned around there at the crest at turn number 11. I think he's had a spin coming through the corner, but meanwhile we do look back to that battle for the final place on the podium with the GT3 Pros as they make their way down and around into turn number 1, and well, with the checkered flag only 5 seconds away, we will be seeing them complete the race after this lap, and Dirt Bounce is there looking to attack as soon as he possibly can, but he has got to find a way through, and I think he won't be able to go for it here. He'll need to do it in the run down the back straight. That would be the best place to do it, for the simple reason, if he makes the move into turn 6 or 7, he will then have to deal with defending against the slipstream of Jeremy DeBover. But talking about one driver who hasn't been doing any defending, here he comes, because as he makes his way down the hill into the final corner, he's led this one from start to finish after a dominant qualifying session, and he is your race winner in the sprint here in the LMP class. It is Paul Walton from the United Kingdom for RD Simsport. P2 in the end will go to Jim Stanton in the class of the LMPs as he makes his way on through. A brilliant drive from Stanton as well, and it will be Stefan Vessels who completes your LMP podium there. P3 for Racing Team Astra Blue. Meanwhile, in what is the GT3 class, he's led this one since the start of qualifying, and as he makes his way down the hill, where it's a role reversal from his teammate last week, Lucas Romano comes on through for RP Motorsport Pro-Am to take the win in the sprint race here in the GT3 Pro class, and it will be Peter Lemkens, his teammate, who comes home P2, a 1-2 for RP Motorsport Pro-Am. They'll both be very pleased with that result, and it will be Jeremy DeBova who just holds off Dirt Bouts in the end. But meanwhile, behind them and winning in the GT3 AM class is Navarro DeBova here. His father made it onto the podium in P3. His son has gone into what is P1 there, and a brilliant drive limit change by DB2 driver Lorenzo Galtieri, meanwhile, has come home in P2 in the GT3 AM class, and then it is going to be Arjen Kregel as he makes his way down through the final corner here, who will come home P3 in the GT3 AM class. And I think the Dutchman will be a little bit surprised at the result, but at the same time know that just keeping his head down has worked wonders for him as he has finished the race in that third place podium position. An absolutely brilliant race up and down the field, and well, plenty of overtakes and racing action, but we will show you those race results very quickly on the left hand side of your screen, ladies and gentlemen. We can see in the end Walton taking home the win in the LMP AM class by a sizable margin over Jim Stanton and Stefan Vessels completing the podium, and then Sam Holman and Paul Williams completing the top 5, Mark Baker, Richard Stanton, Michael Price, Jack Whyborn and Baz Meacham completing the order there. GT3 Pros meanwhile, Lucas Romano taking home that classic win. We're ahead of his teammate Peter Lemkens and Jeremy DeBova completing the podium, Dirt Bouts and DDD Blaming completing the top 5, and then the rest of the order there being what is Gus Franken ahead of Lamet Wedder, and then last but not least Sean Scudder, and then meanwhile in the GT3 AM class, Navarro DeBova finishing and taking the win ahead of Lorenzo Galtieri, Arjen Kregel in P3, and then it's Kurt Van Honak and Davide Favo completing the top 5, Elwin Sykes with a good recovery to P6, James Slates P7, Mark Sykes P8, Liam Tapp P9, and then Mark Arrowsmith in P10, with Tristan Dino Brega coming home in P11. Well, that's it for the sprint race, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back at approximately 5 to 9 tonight, so in just shy of 10 minutes time for the feature race. Don't go anywhere too soon, because you won't want to miss race number 2. There's no doubt about that. We'll see you shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then for the build-up to the feature race in what is round 2 of the PROTO GT3 Championship, as hosted by NXTGEN Racing. This being Lobby 2, as brought to you in collaboration with IMB Racewear, the premier place to go for whether you're looking for real-world or sim racing custom racewear, from racing gloves, racing shoes, all the way down to team clothing, whether it be shirts or jackets. IMB Racewear offering the maximum possible customization, because at the end of the day, their merchandise and clothing is designed for you, by you, and definitely check them out at imbracewear.com today. But after what was an absolutely frantic opening sprint race, where we saw a lot of overtaking in the early stages of the race, but later on in the race it became a little bit quieter. One man who was right at the foray, as we see him make his way around in this build-up session, this practice session in the build-up to the feature race, was Paul Walton. And well, we look from one man of Paul Walton to Paul Williams here, and the team at Tetra Rouge driver, of course, coming close with his teammate of what was Mark Baker, as they made the way on the round of the circuit. And Team Tetra Rouge in the LMP class, both picking up very consistent results through and through, as we do see here Williams making his way down the back straight, and he'll be looking to get another consistent performance in the feature. But speaking of Paul Walton, in the meantime, we believe Paul Walton not in the lobby at this point, so we are waiting for him. But as we look, well, we were looking for Paul Walton and he's not currently here, we can see meanwhile Kurt Van Hoenacker making his way down the back straight. And as he comes rolling on down here, Van Hoenacker as well, putting in a decent result, but not quite up there compared to his teammate, Navarro de Bova. And of course it was the case that young Navarro picking up the win in the GT3 AM class. So we can see him here making his way down in the challenge by DB to Ferrari 488. And he'll be looking to try and make it 2 wins out of 2, or at least 2 places on the podium, after what was a brilliant start to his preceding start. Pole position, followed up by the win in the sprint. Can he make it another podium, or perhaps even another win, and get close to maximum possible points here tonight? We'll have to wait and see. But on top of that as well, what we did see over the course of the sprint race was that this circuit is absolutely merciless. It is a roller coaster of the circuit, and indeed one driver who experienced that roller coaster nature, albeit he will not have wanted to experience it in the way that he did, was Mark Arrowsmith, with a major moment over the course of a given lap which saw him into the wall. And well, Mark Arrowsmith here parked up and waited to go racing once again. And also the driver who did end up on the roller coaster ride, and it's not the one you want when the car was up in the air, Sean Scooter, who I'm very pleased to announce is back in a fully repaired racing team Astra Blue Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. And it is the case, the South African driver in the GT3 Pro class now looking to tackle the circuit in the feature race. Of course, the feature different because it is 4 times the length of the sprint, and we've got that all-important mandatory pit stop for fuel. But as this practice session comes to a close, then it is the case now that we get ready to form the grid for the purposes of what is the feature race. And we'll take you through that grid once it has been fully formed, because unfortunately, due to the fact that we do have what is the post-race broadcast here as brought to you via a replay file, it is the case that we don't quite have the grid data available to you just yet, but we will take you through that grid when our drivers do pull off the line. We'll have to do it using the timing screen on the left-hand side once everybody has lined up. But whilst we are waiting for our drivers to line up, we can look to the blimp camera, of course, here. Peter Lemkens being our focus, and whilst it does say he's P8 overall right now, I can definitely tell you that is not P8 in the field, and that just goes to show you where we do have that slight issue with our timing board. But we'll wait for the grid to be fully updated, for them to roll across the start-finish line, and that's when we'll be able to see who lines up on which row and how our drivers line up for the purposes of the feature race. Of course, they will have the manual double file rolling start, and it will be a full parade lap before they go into that rolling start. And we can see here Elwood Sykes lining up in the racing team Astra Orange McLaren MP412C. Not the best of races, to be fair, for Elwood Sykes in what is the opening race of tonight, and he'll be looking to come back strong in what is this feature, because he'll be starting further up the order. But as all our drivers get ready to go racing, it is the case we look right to the front here, and we can see at the front is Paul Scott and Baz Beecham on the front row of the grid. They did get their cars repaired over the course of the sprint race and made their way back out onto the circuit. And as they make their way down and out towards turn 1 behind the safety car, they line up on our first row. Then it is Jack Whyborn and Michael Price behind them on the second row, followed by Richard Stanton and also Mark Baker on row number 3. Behind them is Paul Williams, and of course he starts behind his teammate. He finished ahead of his teammate in the previous race, and it is Paul Williams and Sam Holman on row number 4 as they make their way around through the crest of 2 and into 3, and then it will be Stefan Vessels and Jim Stanton who line up on row number 5, as we see Vessels there and Stanton just a little bit further back as they make their way down to the S's. The last of our LMP drivers are making their way on around is Paul Walton here, and he will be starting at P11 in the class. In fact, I do believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, it is the case that Walton on his lonesome there in P11, and well, he's taken a bit of a space there to what is the rest of his class, and I think trying to get some tyre temperature in with that extra space. Meanwhile, in the GT3 class, we can see it is Mark Sykes who lines up on pole of all of our GT3 drivers. He's the GT3 and pole position as well, and he is, well, on his lonesome there on row number 6, because Paul Walton would technically be on the row with him. And then we can see James Slates lines up on row at number 7, and alongside him will be Elwin Sykes. And then we do have Davide Favo, who starts off on row number 8, and he is joined by our GT3 Pro pole position of Lamet Wedder there. The Dutchman started at P16 after a very difficult sprint race. Next, Kurt Van Hoenacker and RJ Kregel, they make up row at number 9, the two GT3 AM drivers, before we do have Gus Franken and Lorenzo Gualtieri there on what is row at number 9. Gus Franken puts in a good performance alongside Lorenzo Gualtieri, and then we do have Navarro de Bova, who is our winner in the GT3 AM class in the sprint, and he has got DDD Belaming. He's been challenged by a DB1 sister teammate who will be starting P22. Row number 12 goes to Dirt Bouts and Peter Lemkens. The rivalry between them continues going into this feature, and then it is Jeremy DeBova, P25 there alongside Mark Arrowsmith, and then we do have Tristan Dino Brigger and Lucas Romano on row number 14. And on the final row, Liam Tagg and Sean Scudder will be starting at the back of the field, not classified for the reverse grid, and we'll wait to see how they get on at the back of the field. But meanwhile, we look from them all the way up to the front here as we get ready to go racing for 60 minutes of this feature, race number 2, and it will be to Paul Scott to take us away as he makes his way down the hill. And it's lights out and away we go there for race number 2 as the green flag waves, and we can see our LMP2 class drivers all settling for position as they look for their way to turn 1. Meanwhile, Richard Stanton here, he goes to the offensive immediately up the inside of Price. He goes to move a Baz Meacham around the outside of Paul Scott through 1 and into 2, and Meacham up to P1. He's taken the lead of this race as behind Jack Whyborn tries to find a way on through. Our LMP class drivers there all making it through safely. Paul Walton, meanwhile, side by side there with Stefan Vessels. They come down, but Vessels commits to holding the inside line into the S's and holds off Walton for the time being as they make their way up through. Meanwhile, looking back up, we can see Sam Holman here battling with Mark Baker, as Mark Baker I think picked up a slowdown penalty or had a slight off as they make their way through the corner. And Mark Baker seeing that there, that is Price going round as we see going round. That's Jack Whyborn who's had a spin coming out of turn 6, and Richard Stanton has managed to turn it at turn 7 as well as the GT3 class drivers come through, and Mark Sykes holding the GT3 class lead right now. But behind him there you can see Davide Favo battling with Lamet Wedder, as Wedder on the right hand side, in fact the left hand side of our screen, now the right hand side, as they make their way down the back straight here. The two orange cars very similar in colour and complexion given the fact they are from different teams. As they make their way down the straight here, it is the case that this battle is going to go into the braking zone here. Favo in the end is going to back out, but meanwhile behind you see the mad scramble. There's Navarro de Bova up the inside of Elwin Sykes, and he turns the rear a bit too much there and taps the wall, and that is not the way we wanted to start this race given the amount of ground he had gained. But as they all make their way over the hill right now, you can see that Davide Favo has now got Kurt Van Hoenacker on his 6 as they make their way across the timeline. They're going to be 3 wide almost here as they make their way to turn 1. Lorenzo Gualtieri at the inside, and Kurt Van Hoenacker says, you know what, I'm not going to force this. It's the opening laps of a 60-minute race. There's no need to be crazy here as they make their way down into turns 3 and 4 once again. And well, whilst they're battling for position, I can tell you that Paul Walton's already up to P5 in the LMP class as all of our drivers make their way around on this second lap. As they come charging on through here, other stories to tell with regards to early progress or lack of progress or regress. I can tell you that Lucas Romano right now, he's up to P21. That's a good gain already of what is 4 places in class, and as he makes his way down up to turn number 6 right now, could looking to continue to build that momentum. As meanwhile, we seem to have a bit of a box in here where Jack Whyborn go very slowly coming out of turn number 7, and that's going to give an opportunity to Richard Stanton here. The 2 LMP drivers, Reverse Moses in, what are the 2 GT3 drivers there, and talk about that, the splitting cars as they make their way down the back straight here, and as they come down to the braking zone, Whyborn's going to go defence versus Stanton. Stanton's going to go onto the inside here, he's going to commit, he goes all in, and Whyborn in the end backs out there, and I think it is the case that the Englishman just decided, you know what, he could not hold the position as he makes his way down the hill. Meanwhile, we can see that Kurt Van Hoenacker has finally found a way clear of what is Davide Favo there as they make the way on through the right-hander at 12. Oh, goodness me, the rear of your picture, that's a major moment as RJ Kregel, and also what is that, I believe, That is Gus Franken come to blows. The Pro and the AM driver both in a side-by-side collision out of 12. Franken carries on. Gus Franken jumps to the pits, but my goodness, that was a nasty shunt for the pair of them. And well, I think RJ Craig was a very severely wounded Ferrari, and Gus Franken having to take repair work with that jump to the pits, so that will set him back a lap. But meanwhile, we look from them to our race leaders in the LMP class as they make their way into the chicane here. And as they come through, what we can see in the review picture, Paul Walton gain another place on Michael Price. And he's just simply going through the order. He is cutting his way through at a rapid rate. But then we do look to Sam Holman here, the Hollerton racing driver who's going on the offensive. And as he looks up the inside here versus Paul Scott, I think Scott's going to give him the space as they make their way through turn number 1. Now, will Paul Scott come back at him in the run up the hill? I don't think so. I think Paul Scott's a bit too far back and he hasn't got the momentum. So Sam Holman making a good move up the inside. It's early pickings yet, to be fair, given the fact that we are only 4 minutes into a 60-minute race. So we've got still 56 minutes to go. But Sam Holman wasting no time in making his way into that P2 position. And of course now he'll be hunting after Baz Beecher as they make the way down towards turn number 6. In fact, he's going to go for it here potentially. But we do have, of course, and we saw this at the Apex Race Academy lobby last night, we do have a big question around the fuel in the LMP2 class cars. They cannot afford to push at maximum power all the way through the race, otherwise they're likely to take a second pit stop, and we'll have to wait and see what happens as they make the way on around here. Who's pushing too hard and has to take on extra fuel in the pits and who's not. But right now Holman looking for the move of the lead. He's on the inside here as they make the way to the braking zone for turn number 10, and you can see behind Walton coming through as we have got, I think that is Liam Tack, who's turned and he's literally in the path of all the LMPs, but he stays as wide as he can as they make the way over the hill. But this means that Walton now, after making his way past Paul Scott, will have a shot at Baz Beecher as they make the way across that timeline. You can see Sam Holman, well, he's happy with the move he's done. It was a good move. And now Paul Walton coming up the inside here, Baz Beecher. And I think our LMP drivers are looking at Paul Walton and thinking, you're in a race of your own, buddy. We're letting you go on this one. We're not battling with you because it's a case of when, not if, we're going to be able to see you pass us as they make the way on down. To be fair, Walton is making no time wasted with regards to cutting through the LMP class order. He's come from the back of it already up to P2, and we're not even 10 minutes into this race as he's now hunting down Sam Holman and pushing on through. But to be fair, I do think a number of drivers here in the LMP class will be saving fuel as well to get themselves that one single stop rather than multiple stops here. And we can see it there, Paul Scott in the YouTube chat saying about saving fuel as we see him currently tucked in behind Baz Beecher in P4 and hunting after the P3 driver. And of course, in that tow down the back straight here, he can afford to save fuel. But meanwhile, talking about position and going on the offensive, what we can see here is the case that Lambert Weather coming past James Slates, and ahead of them is Mark Sykes, who continues to lead the GT3 class as they make the way down the hill in through the S's here. And Paul Scott has just passed Baz Beecher up at the chicane from what I'm hearing. That's happened off camera, but meanwhile we can see that Mark Sykes here holding a nice run as he comes on down into turn number 6. And as we look from him, we do look as Paul Walton has taken the lead this race. He's just made the move on what is Sam Holman into turn number 1. And we didn't quite catch up on camera, but we can see that also Price here battling with Paul Scott in the run through 1 and down into turn number 3, 4. And well, I think Paul Scott definitely thinking about the longer game here, thinking about that fuel saving and about balancing the car out and conserving the car rather than pushing too hard, because he's not running far off the pace. He's just simply not over defending right now, and that's fair play as they make the way down towards turn number 6. And he has got Stefan Vessels now closed up very close behind him as they make the way through the double right complex and onto that back straight. And as they come on through here, we do look a bit further down at the order, and what I can tell you is that we now do have our top 3 in the GT3 AM class all coming together. We're looking at Lorenzo Galtieri at the back of the pack here. As we see at the front of it, that is Lambert Weather, who's a GT3 Pro, and well, he'll be looking to break away. But you can see Mark Sykes there in a bit of a bad run coming up the hill, and we ride on board the gearbox here for the NXTGEN Racing with Sam Casey's UK driver as at the 666 machine he comes down into the S's now, and well, that's James Slates and Galtieri behind. And as they roll on through here, it is the case that all 3 drivers absolutely rocking together as they make their way through 5 and heading up towards 6. Now Sykes, to be fair, can be very fast when he's on the ball, and as he makes his way into turn number 6, he will be not looking to yield to Slates or Galtieri, given the fact that he had a difficult day at Watkins Glen, and today it's all about redemption. But he goes a little bit deep there into turn 7. And as he exits out the corner here, James Slate's hugging the back of him now, looking for that potential move. It's the drag race down the back straight here, both of them in the Audi R8 of course, and behind them the Lamborghini Galtieri with the same Audi V10 engine. And as they make the way down the back here, it is the case that coming in towards the dip they roll, and well, James Slate's going to be on the outside here. He's got his nose ahead, but Mark Sykes will defend it hard on the inside here. He goes nice and deep to Sykes, but he collects it very nicely on Apex there, and that actually causes James Slates to bunch up behind him, and as a result, as they make the way down the hill and in towards 12, there's no change between the three of them, but Mark Sykes definitely having to get his defensive posture out as they make the way down onto another lap. Now as they come on to turn number 1 here, and what for them is lap number 7, James Slates all over the back of him, but not able to find a way on through. As we do see there, that is one of the Stantons, and that is what is Jim Stanton coming on through, and that will upset the apple cart a little bit as Gualtieri yields to Stanton as they make the way down through the S's here, and I can imagine he'll be hoping that Jim Stanton gets past James Slates and Mark Sykes, an inconvenient time for his GT3 class rivals, but we'll have to wait and see. As meanwhile, we are hearing that Price has had an off. He has dropped down to P7 in the LMP class, and he's now trying to recover from what has been, I think, a bit of a mistake. But speaking of a driver who had a very fortunate moment, and we can see that now as we look to Lucas Romano here, he just, oh goodness me, I say he's just had a fortunate one, and now he's had a misfortune in Kurt Van Hoenacker getting it wrong, and Lucas Romano trying to turn past Van Hoenacker coming out of turn 7 and making contact, and what a race winner in what was the sprint race in the GT3 Pro class. It's not looking as good right now, but meanwhile, I can tell you that in the lead of the GT3 AMs are battling once again. James Slates versus Mark Sykes, and in the rear picture, that is Lorenzo Gualtieri, who gets turned with a little bit of contact there with dirt bounce, and well, Gualtieri I think will be absolutely fuming at that as we see that Sam Holman comes on through, and that was very close there. Holman having to snap the brakes on as he made his way through the chicane. It is getting a little bit scrabbly between our drivers here as they all make their way around, and I think we're not even 10 minutes complete right now. We are going to be seeing a number of incidents here, and well, hopefully not too many. As meanwhile, just in front there, you can see Paul Scott trying to find his way past Stephen Vessels. He does, and now Vessels up the inside there of Romano as they make the way up the hill. And our LMP class drivers, when we saw it in the Lobby 1 last night, we also saw it in round 1 for Lobby 2, and it is the case that in this feature race, when the LMP2 class does come up behind the GT3s in the feature, it is a nasty pack to have to cipher their way through, and everybody playing their strategies, thinking about their battles. This is where the complexity comes there. You can see there, Paul Scott going around the outside of what is, excuse me, not Romano there, that is going around the outside of, I believe, well, that is Romano in fact, my apologies, getting it wrong there, and it is the case as they find the way on around. It's now one of those situations whereby both drivers trying to come through together, and well, it is the case that whatever Scott does, Vessels is trying to mimic as they make the way down the back straight. But as they do, we can see that Paul Williams not too far behind here. He's currently P6 in the LMP class, and as he makes his way through the GT3 traffic here, he's going to try and cover as much of them as he can. And we should correct ourselves earlier, we were talking about the Ferrari Lemkens being passed and then Romano. My apologies for that. We can see at the rear of the picture there, that is one of the racing team Astra Lamborghinis. That's Sean Scooter, who is currently in P20. That's P5 in the GT3 Pro class as he tries to find his way after Peter Lemkens, who's 1 second up the road. But of course, with the LMPs coming through, it's all about catching up at the right time. And speaking about catching the driver at the right time, Lucas Romano makes a little bit of contact there with the rear of Navarro de Bova. And as they do, you can see Romano and Peter Lemkens go side by side, and the two teammates safely navigate it in the end. Romano goes deep into the corner, and Lemkens now trying to go around the outside through the S's here. Oh my goodness, this is really uncomfortable to watch because you never go side by side through the S's, and Lemkens backs out there, and well, that would have been absolutely tears for the team, the Grand Prix Motorsport Prime team, with both drivers going side by side through the S's. They dared to, and my goodness, they dared to brave it almost there, but they didn't quite go for it. But you can imagine Lemkens right now wants to find a way through. He wants Romano to push a little bit more here. Both drivers, of course, wanted to get the most out of the race pace because behind them is Sean Scooter, and then we have Lorenzo Gualtieri, who's trying to recover his race right now as they make the way down the back straight here. Now as they come charged on down, I can tell you it is the case that with the way the field's gone right now, that Gualtieri, he's got the pace to find his way past Schultz because he's going to go up the inside here into turn number 10. Into that heavy braking zone they go, and well, the two teammates, of course, from sister teams, they won't waste their time holding one another up, but Scooter makes a bit of contact there with Didi Vlaeminck on the exit. A tiny tap, and Vlaeminck, well, his race is going from good to bad to disastrous, and I think that's going to be some frustration for Vlaeminck as he is a lap down, and now he's had a bit of contact that's put him even a bit further down in terms of overall race time as he tries to find a way back into this race. But meanwhile, speaking of moves and battles, well, Elwin Sykes and just been passed by Tristan Di Brega as they make the way across that timeline and onto another lap here. The two GT3 AM drivers for Racing Team Astra. And we can see Norega for Racing Team Astra Blue here. He's currently in P6 of the GT3 AM class. with 13 minutes of this race complete, and he is trying to get some points. He's hunting after Lorenzo Gualtieri, his sister teammate, if you will, albeit the gap between the two of them at this point in time the best part of 4.5 seconds, as he looks to try and find some more places and bring some good points home on the board. And as they make the way on around, it is the case that right now we see that Sean Scooter going very, very wide, locking up the brakes. I think he missed his brake zone entirely. Alternatively, there is something very wrong with that Lamborghini, because going that deep and straight lining, we're not normally seeing the Lamborghinis understeer, but he's found a way to understeer it off the circuit. I think he may have just missed his braking point and locked up. But meanwhile, we look from him to back into the LMP class. And meanwhile, with all that going on in the GT3s, we have battling in the LMPs as well. And that is Mark Baker here chasing after Michael Price. Both drivers having had a difficult start to their races. And as they move towards the end of the first quarter, it is the case that Baker looking quite hungry for a position for P7 here versus Price. Now as they roll them down through at the S's here and in towards turn number 5, the question is, you can see that Baker taking a lot more run through the apex, but he actually understeered a little bit wide off apex and then actually experienced oversteer mid-apex. It's a bit weird to talk about it like that, but trust me, you can see the car there just not settling, and as a result, when he tried to get on the power, the car just kicked round. But you can see as they make the way out of turn 7, getting way too close to the back of Michael Price, and Price was very smart with that. I don't know if you guys and girls noticed, he made sure that he didn't get on the throttle immediately coming out of the apex to give himself some room to the GT3 in front, and also take away any momentum that Baker could put on him in the back straight. And that is why now you can see Baker's not been able to close up to the Excite Racing driver coming out of turn 7. He's closed up through the chicane here, but Michael Price using every potential trick in the book, every legal trick in the book, to keep Mark Baker at bay and frustrate him as they make the way across that timeline. But Baker now's looking for that move. Price pulls into the middle of the road here. Baker trying to intimidate him into go defensive, and Price does go defensive as they make the way up through the hill. The battle is on as Sean Scooter into the pits, I think, for a scheduled stop, but also some repair work or investigation of the car due to the issues they're experiencing. But as they make the way down into the S's here, Price holding on to P7 for now in the LMP class versus Mark Baker. Meanwhile, looking further up the road, we can see Paul Scott now starting to go back on the offensive versus Dimitri. He lunges into turn 7. That's a very tricky move to do from so far back, because the way turn 7 naturally rotates through it is a very tight apex, and that inside line a difficult one to hold. And you can see that Stefan Vessel's actually gaining the position there with Paul Scott so slow out the corner, but the three drivers all just in position here down the back straight. Vessel's on the inside, then it's Meacham on the outside here. It's going to be Vessel's going for the move, and as he does, classic move up the inside there, gets it done. And as they make the way out of the corner now, will Meacham feel the pain of Scott behind him as they roll on down the hill? Well, I think if they do at this point, it's going to be going into turn 1. Paul Scott's looking at it, he's thinking about it, he dares to dream about it, he looks at the inside, but Vance Beecher says, you know what, I've got the arrow of downforce in order to be able to hold on to it around the outside, and he holds on to that P4 for now. But Paul Scott looking feisty, but just not picking the right times to overtake by the looks of things, and that is why now Stefan Vessels is back up into P3 in the LMP2 AM class as they make the way through the S's and through turn number 5. But as they come through, we do look a bit further down the order, and Mark Sykes continues to lead the GT3 AM class here. He has an advantage of 1.8 seconds over James Slate, so we can see in the rear of your picture there as the camera pans to P2 in the GT3 AM class, and the RP Motorsport Pro-Am driver right now just putting in those laps. He's keeping his head down and getting on with the job as he makes his way on around. I can tell you that Lorenzo Gualtieri has left the pit lane quite recently, so as a result, Gualtieri going for a very early pit stop. Now, he has had a little bit of a moment, but not too many hard knocks to be fair. So if this is an undercut, it is a huge attempt at an undercut here. And I think he's going to have to do quite a bit of fuel saving later on. But meanwhile, Sean Scooter there having an off, and that is at turn 5. He's had the off, along with Jack Whyborn, and Whyborn missing the whole front end of that LMP2 car is Jack Whyborn. My goodness, I think the two have been involved in the incident, and that is also Jeremy DeBova there who's been involved. Now, the three drivers, I think, may have had a coming together. Whether it was all together at once or whether one of them got it wrong, it remains to be seen. But Jack Whyborn jumps to the pits, and Jeremy DeBova, I think that Mercedes has seen better days. He's reversed off the circuit, and I think it may be a jump to the pits for the Belgian. As meanwhile, Mark Sykes here will currently continue to lead. He's hunting after Dirt Bounce, and James Slate's hunting after him. And Mark Arrowsmith, meanwhile, in what is that P3 position, the GT3 AMs, but you can see Lucas Romano behind him, and Romano looking very bitey and fighty here as they make the way down and around. We ride on board the gearbox of the privateer Mark Arrowsmith. You can see the flashing lights there of Lucas Romano. He's trying to say to him, don't go for it. And well, it is the case that he looks at Romano, but Arrowsmith says, I'm not backing out because I know what's going to happen if I do, and that is I'm going to be seeing Navarro de Bova right behind me, and Navarro de Bova is in the same class as Mark Arrowsmith. As Arrowsmith finds Romano going all the way around, he gets unsettled into the S's, and now Arrowsmith has lost a lot of speed there as he brings the car back together, and Navarro de Bova gains a position by simply having Mark Arrowsmith make a mistake, and Arrowsmith of course now has to bring the car back under control with all the cars coming through on the racing line, and that is a very painful loss for the privateer as he now has to get himself back up to speed. And I do wonder how much he's taken off the tyre in terms of a potential flat spot and having to lock the brakes up in order to get the car to stop and stay settled. But he has been showing a lot of pace, to be fair, Arrowsmith. He's dropped down to P5 from P3 in class. He's now down to P19 overall, and I'm sure he will try and bounce back here, as we do see kind of through that steady devalaming. But I think Arrowsmith might have a problem. In fact, he's holding very far to the right, or whether he's just trying to settle his nerves a little bit and get racing once again. Well, whilst all this has been happening, I can tell you that Peter Lemkens has been following his teammate, which is Lucas Romano, around on circuit right now. The two RP Motorsport Pro-Am drivers trying to work together here to make the way to make it another 1-2. And they do have a gap of what is in the region of 10 seconds to the next target up the road in their class, the GT3 Pro class, and that is Dirt Bounce, who's in P2 of the class, and it'll be Lambert Wedder, who's a further 5 seconds up the road. But meanwhile, whilst they're looking to try and gain ground, we look up to our LMP class drivers, and we can see Paul Scott from NXTGEN Racing here currently in that P5 position, chasing after Baz Beecham still as they make their way across the timeline onto another lap. We are almost 20 minutes into this 1 hour race right now, almost a third of the way in as Arrowsmith into the pits. I think he's got a problem since that mistake, well, not that mistake necessarily, but that incident rolling down through these corners, which saw him make the mistake and up onto the grass. And well, we can see that Paul Scott, as he looks to hunt down Baz Beecham here, he's just not close enough and instead doing some fuel saving. I think being smart here, Paul Scott, he can see that Stefan Vessels has got Baz Beecham getting closer and closer, and I think what Scott is relying on is that he can do a little bit of fuel saving here and then let the two in front battle and naturally bring themselves back towards him. And as we see all three drivers making their way out of turn number 7 there, and Stefan Vessels just getting a little bit of oversteer on power on exit. That shows you how hard the racing Team Astra Blue driver is pushing as they make their way down the back straight. Now as they come rolling on down here, of course, Baz Beecham will gain that massive slipstream toe in towards the dip, but as they come down, Beecham's going to look up the inside here. He's not wasting any time as Beecham, and he makes the move on the inside here, much like Vessels did earlier on him. And as they make their way out of the corner, they keep trading places here, but this back and forth does mean that Sam Holman is now 10 seconds up the road to the pair of them as Vessels, oh my goodness, and Vessels there just taking too much apex curb and taking Beecham across the road with him. And well, I do think that's a very unfortunate instant. And well, I think Vessels there just trying to go for an inside line. You could see what he's trying to do, but in taking so much curb, it's just lifted the car off the road surface and caused it to understeer into Beecham. And we can see Vessels there waiting for Beecham to come through before building up any speed. I think he realises that it may have been his mistake there, and I think it will be the case that Beecham will not be too happy about the one as he straight lines across the road there. I think the BRM LMP's got to jump to the pits. That is damage. We just see him jump to the pits, but with that, of course, what that means now is a lot of places are going to be gained by the drivers who are further behind, and it is Paul Williams in particular who is now the head of the mid-pack in the LMPs who have gained through all this. The Team Tetra Rouge driver has Michael Price and Mark Baker behind him, and you can see there Williams actually really nailing spot on that pass from Gus Franken to give him breathing room versus Price. He's opened that gap up from 0.3 of a second to a whole 1.2 seconds by just timing the move on Gus Franken into turn 7. And as they make their way down the back straight here, well, now Price is battling with Mark Baker, and Baker's got to find the hard way past Michael Price, and he goes very deep on the brakes. He gets it just to the end of the apex. Oh, and Michael Price there, as he tries to get on the power, just taps the rear of what is the Team Tetra Rouge machine on Mark Baker, and the Excite Racing driver goes around 90 degrees, and well, he'll be kicking himself for that. He had the right idea, which was to get on the power and exit as soon as possible to attack Baker over the crest, but he just went a little too soon and couldn't avoid tapping the rear of Mark Baker, and Price has dropped down behind Richard Stanton, who's gained a place and is now up into P6. Well, how the fortunes favour one driver a brief moment and then they go against the driver the other moment, as right now this race has proven to have plenty of drama of racing action, and as our drivers continue to make the way around, we're not even halfway into this race. Stefan Vessels is into the pits, I think, to do repair work on the car and potentially to take some fuel on. We'll have to wait and see, but this race right now has been incredibly unpredictable, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more before we reach the checkered flag. As our drivers continue to make their way on around here, most of the gaps now have opened up to an extent, but to be fair, Arjen Kregel here, the Team Racing Netherlands driver, as he makes his way out to turn at number 12 and across that timeline and on to another lap. He is hunting after Gualtieri, albeit it is the case that he's got dirt bouts between himself and the next driver in the GT3 AM classes. We're hearing that Lucas Romano is into the pit lane for what we would believe is a scheduled stop, despite the fact he's got damage on the car. I think he's tried to get the car to go at least 20 minutes so he can go for the undercut stop. We saw in the Apex Racing Academy lobby last night that our earliest undercuts of the GT3 class came in at around the 20 to 22 minute mark of the race, so it is a valid approach, but he will have to do a lot in terms of fuel saving or managing the car towards the end. Of course, how does the undercut work, I hear you ask? Well, it is the case that right now a driver who may be in a bit of traffic, like Arjen Kregel, may decide to pit now, so that way they can give themselves some clear space on circuit to put in some solid laps, equivalent of qualifying laps, and then gain time on the drivers who pit after them. But of course, the gamble behind that is if you don't give yourself the space on circuit, or you don't have the pace to make up that time, then you will lose out. Plus, the earlier you pit, you may have to do some fuel saving at the end of the race compared to drivers who go a bit deeper. But we can see there how dirt bouts still between the two GT3 AM drivers, and as they make the way on through, it is a bit frustrating there for Kregel because he does want to come on through. But meanwhile, we hear that Paul Walton is into the pits from the lead of this race, and meanwhile Richard Stanton, he's looking one way, he's looking another way versus Price, and as they make the way through the kink of 9 and down in towards the dip, into turn 10 they come. Stanton's going to try and go around the outside. He's got the overspeed, he carries a huge amount of speed there. And to be fair, Stanton's carried way too much speed because Price is going to say, well, it was a nice move initially, but I'm going to take that back as we... Oh, goodness me, Price misses the pit entry and hits the tyre barrier there. My goodness, it is the case. Well, he thought, I think, well, I've got this position, and then suddenly, midway through coming down the hill, probably there was a few expletives in the cockpit. On the team radio, they probably said, you've got to come in, Price. And he came in at the last possible moment, and Stanton's probably thinking to himself right now, okay, well, I'll just take the place back and come into the pits. But it is the case. So caught up in the race, I think, Michael Price, that Stanton's gained the place back, and now I do think that Michael Price will be using his repair as part of his pit stop. But meanwhile, with all that happening, I can tell you that Paul Williams, after his pit stop, has come out in a lot. Oh, well, not after his pit stop, my apologies. Paul Walton, after his pit stop, has come out 20.5 seconds behind Paul Williams, and Paul Williams, meanwhile, is in a lot of traffic here, as the drivers he was battling with, that was Mark Baker and also Michael Price, they've come into the pits, and I think they've got themselves some clear space on circuit. We'll have to wait and see, as Williams will peel into the pits here. And I think, in fact, as he just comes in, he runs out of fuel. He's pretty much on empty as he comes on in. Your race leader, Sam Holman, makes his way into the pit lane along with Paul Scott. And where is Paul Walton, I hear you ask? Well, here he comes through the chicane, and I'm certain it will be the case that he'll come on through to retake the lead of this race. Such was his advantage when he came into the pit lane in excess of 10 seconds. And as he makes his way on through here, he does have a little bit of traffic, but it's not compromised him too heavily as he makes his way across that timeline and now goes on to another lap as he comes on through here and retakes the lead. We do look a bit further down to the lead of the GT3 Pro class, and Lambert Wedder here, the Team Racing Netherlands driver, has been in a bit of a world of his own over the course of this race so far, and he's putting in a very solid performance, to be fair, as he makes his way around. And well, we can see right now our LMP drivers with all their pit stops. Wait to see how they all balance out. But Lambert Wedder, we would presume at some point, is due for a pit stop within the next 10 minutes. Our drivers who go for the overcut will stay out of the circuit as long as possible. We typically see them pit by around the 40-minute mark. We'll have to wait and see what exactly happens with regards to those late pit stops, but we are waiting for the GT3 pit stop window to really open up. Although I say that, Elwin Sykes is into the pits from what was a P5 in the GT3 AM class, P19, and well, he will drop some places here, as meanwhile we say hello in the YouTube chat there to the South African we're currently watching, and that is Tristan Dino Brega there, the number 70 driver from Racing Team Astra Blue. Good evening to you, Tristan, and well, we hope you're doing well as you watch back the race. And we can see here right now going in what is P16 overall, a P4 in class, as he makes his way into the pit lane there. And we have the majority of our leading GT3 class drivers now peeling into the pits. It is the pit window, and we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out for them. But meanwhile, having already pitted and trying to make up some time here through an early pit stop. We see Lucas Romano with a freshly repaired BMW M4. Well, now he's on the hunt here. He'll try and come out around his teammate Peter Lemkens, if not slightly ahead of him. And as he makes his way down into the braking zone for turn number 10, it is the case that Romano are looking very sharp here as he rolls on through. Coming out of the pits, meanwhile, we can see it is Dirt Bounce here who's leading. At the time, he was battling for the podium in the GT3 PRO class. Where is Lucas Romano? Here you ask, well, here is Romano. Dirt Bounce, meanwhile, making his way out the pit lane. You could hear the roar of the Mercedes V8 there as it came out of the pits and got up to speed. And well, Romano has jumped Peter Lemkens. He's jumped his teammate by a sizable margin. So Romano has made that undercut work to get him what is 4.7 seconds clear of his teammate Lemkens as they make the way back up to speed now. We are 28 minutes in, we're almost at the halfway point, and it does look as though the undercut is working out for our drivers as they make the way on around the circuit. But as they come charged on through, we can see it is the case that that's Stefan Vettel's making his way through and past what is Peter Lemkens, and saying there in the YouTube chat that he had 23 incidents at his pit stop and did the next 40 minutes with only a single incident. I think Vettel's after that contact with Baz Beecham, which he said himself in the YouTube chat was his bad, too much curve, and because of the damage had to pit early, so a lot of fuel saving to follow. Well, I think Stefan Vettel's at this point will be looking for a calmer race here and just looking to bring the car, manage the car to the end, which to be fair can lead to picking up some good points. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But meanwhile, talking about a driver who can't afford to wait, here he is, Navarro de Bova, who's looking for the move on James Slates here. This is for the lead of the GT3 AM class, albeit we do have some GT3 AMs who pitted recently, including our leader when he pitted at Mark Sykes. But it is the case that both Navarro de Bova and also James Slates, in fact, my apologies there, they have already pitted, I should clarify, so they have jumped ahead of Mark Sykes, as has Tristan Di Nobrega after the pit stops, and it's Mark Sykes who's down in P4 now. So it's the case the three drivers there, by simply pitting before Mark Sykes and showing that pace, they found their way ahead as they make the way out around. But it is the case right now, we'll wait to see whether de Bova can get past James Slates. He is hunting down the Audi R8 driver here, but there's a long way to go as they make the way through the S's. Now, of course, with 30 minutes this race remaining plus the final lap, it is the case that they do have now, so they have now reached the halfway point effectively, or the clock's almost at the halfway point. What Navarro de Bova can start to think about, of course, is when does he go for the move, because you can see the gap between them. It's only 7/10 of a second, and he's looking very comfortable here. He doesn't need to rush this move. The only time we need to rush the move is if Di Nobrega was closing up at a rapid rate, but Di Nobrega is 8.7 seconds behind. So as a result, we can see here is the case that Navarro de Bova to take his time with this move on the back straight here, gaining quite rapidly in the slipstream of the Audi. And we see James Slater doing a little bit of weaving down the back straight, trying to break the toe, which is legal to be fair. He is allowed to do some weaving as long as it's not excessive, and the stewards will know what is excessive and what's not. I'm sure Slates will know as well as he makes his way over the crest and down into turn number 12 here, as we hear that Baz Beecham into the pit for another stop. So that is the case. I think he's actually putting the fuel in the car now after having the repair work done to the car, so that is going to be a stop to take him to the end. But James Slate's holding on for the time being, but Navarro de Bova definitely inching closer each and every lap. Now as they make the way through the S's here, we do look from them to Kurt Van Hoornacker. And of course Navarro de Bova's teammate here, well, how the fortunes are a bit different for both drivers, with what we can see of Van Hoornacker here all the way down in P8 in the GT3 AM class, battling for P7 versus Elwin Sykes as they make the way down the back straight here. I do think we are going to see an attempt at a move, but it's going to be very late. The McLaren's got good acceleration, but it hasn't got the top end. Meanwhile, it's going to be the reverse here. Kurt Van Hoornacker goes up the inside. He's not quite fully along, but Elwin Sykes goes a bit deep there. He will have to cut back on the defensive line. You can see Stefan Vettel's there coming through, and Van Hoornacker giving a little tap to the rear of Elwin Sykes. There was very slow out the corner by comparison. He's got to wait once again as they make the way down through the right-hander. But meanwhile, coming down into the chicane is Navarro de Bova, his teammate, and chasing after James Slate still, as there's no battle between the two of them this time. It is the case that de Bova getting closer, but he's having to wait here. He can't find a way through currently. He's going to have to be patient as they make the way through the right-hander, and as they do. In terms of retirements in this race and what we're hearing, the only retirement we've had so far, as I understand it, although I could be wrong, is Jack Whyborn, although it's a little bit of a difficult one to tell on our timing board. But we do have a number of drivers in the pits who've been in the pits for some time, but we are watching Navarro de Bova right now battling for the lead of the GT3 AM class versus James Slater. We see de Bova there letting what is Jim Stanton through. Stanton coming through like a hammer as they make their way through the S's and up towards turn number 6 they go. And will Stanton wasting no time. He's going hunting after 7 vessels, 22 seconds up the road. As they make their way on around right now, it is the case that Navarro Debova doing everything he can to keep on pushing forward as they make their way through the right-hander of turn number 7. Meanwhile, what about Kurt Van Hoenacker? Did he find a way past Elwin Sykes? He did, and in fact, just checking back here, we're hearing that he's made the move coming out of turn number 7. Elwin Sykes a long way back there. I think Elwin Sykes has made a mistake, and Kurt Van Hoenacker getting that P7 in the GT3 AM class. But as they make their way around and on to another lap here, it is the case that we do look to the battle for what is a P4 in the LMP class. And well, these two were together earlier on, the two teammates of Team Tetrarch, Mark Baker behind what is Paul Williams there as they make their way for the right-hander of turn number 6 and in towards 7. And I think the two drivers running together here and running in a smart formation and just working it out together and not putting any undue pressure on one another, just matching one another for pace. And it will be some good points for Team Tetrarch and good points for both drivers as well. 2 top 5s will work out very nicely for them indeed as they make their way down towards the dip and in towards the chicane. Of course, they've still got plenty of race time to go here, so things could change as we wait and see what happens. But meanwhile, as they make their way on through, it is the case that whilst Navarro Debova here is battling it with James Slates and trying to find his way on through, I can tell you that over the last couple of laps, Tristan Niederbrigger has actually closed up by a second so far. If these two, Debova and also Slates, continue to battle like this and battle a little bit harder, I would not be surprised if we suddenly see Dino Brega close up over, say, 5 or 6 laps and be there towards what is the end. We'll have to wait and see what is going to happen as they make the way charging on round down towards turn number 10. But as they make the way in towards the braking zone, it is the case that Debova waiting once again here, and I think what his idea, oh goodness me, and I say that, and James Slates goes very deep into the corner, and as we ride on board here with Navarro Debova, this is the opportunity we'll want now, because James Slates will have to settle himself down, and that Audi, when a mistake is made, becomes very sketchy. It's like on ice as Navarro Debova here closed on the rear, but he doesn't go for the move into turn 1. He lifts off a little bit here on entry. You can see taking that slightly wide line here to settle the car down. Now in terms of traffic coming up behind, he does have quite a window before the next LMP comes through of Sam Holman. It is the case that Sam Holman is the best part of around 10 seconds down the road right now, but closing fast as they roll through the corners. And as they make their way into the SS here, Debova, we had one chance and we could see once again that James Slate's going a little bit wide up onto the curb. You can hear the Audi in front as they look down to turn 6. It's side by side under braking here, and Navarro Debova looks for it. He can go for it here, but he doesn't quite have the run to force James Slates to cede the position. And as they make their way out the corner, it is the case that right now the battle rages on. James Slates still holds on here. It's so difficult to overtake through turns 6 and 7. 6 is where if you can outbrake your opponent, you can get the move done, but you want to really set things up for the long back straight as they make their way down towards the chicane once again. And James Slates, meanwhile, we ride on board the gearbox of the Audi R8 driver here as we look back towards the fast approaching Ferrari, and as they make their way through the chicane, well, what is going through the mind of the RP Motorsport Pro-Am driver right now? I think what's going through his mind is, you don't let him pass, because you give him an opportunity, he's going to try and run away with this. We know that Debova very fast when he gets some clear track, and as they make their way into turn 1, James Slate's holding his ground right now, and you can see where the two cars just slightly different in their performance, where the Audi just a bit stronger through the corners when Slates nails it through the corners, but it's so unstable by comparison with the Ferrari, despite them both being mid-engine rear-wheel drive. And as they make their way down through the S's, this is where Slates will now try and use the Audi to open up the gap, plus the fact that we have Sam Olco through as Slates takes a bit too much curb there and runs wide, and as he does, that will lead to Navarro Debova taking the lead of the GT3 AM class with one tiny mistake. The pressure has got to James Slates, and my goodness, now can he come back? That is the question. Does he have the pace to find a way back? I think he's going to need to settle his nerves for a lap or two and then go hunting, but just one mistake in the end as they make their way down the back straight here is all she wrote as they now make their way through. But you can see in the slipstream he is very gradually gaining on Navarro Debova once again, but it's the case that the Audi here not quite as strong down the straight compared to the Ferrari in the tow. And as they make their way down, we do look to Lucas Romano here battling for P2 in the GT3 Pro class, and as they make their way through the right hander here at turn number 1, well, Romano, he would love to make it 2 wins out of 2. Lambert Wedder is only 4 seconds up the road here. It is possible, and we see there it is the case going off circuit. That's Liam Tack. He's moved out of the way there. I think he's worried about the drivers coming through as he makes contact with the wall there, and as Tack goes wide, Romano's now given the space once again to go hunting, and you can see there both of the drivers, whether it be the Mercedes, the dirt bounce, or the BMW of Romano, both trying to clatter their way over the curves, but Romano taking way too much curb into turn 5, and that spoiled his opportunity for the time being as they make their way through the right-hander here. And we're hearing that Peter Lemkens, oh my good lord, Peter Lemkens has had a horrific moment. I think that is coming into what is the essence, and we see Mark Baker there unsettled through taking some evasive action to Peter Lemkens, and Lemkens in the end, what I'm hearing in my ear, has made major contact with the wall coming through turns 3 and 4, and that's why the RP Motorsport Pro Am driver is now dropping down the order. I suspect will be trying to make his way into the pits, but it has been a difficult one for Peter Lemkens as he makes his way on around. But meanwhile, we do look from Lemkens back up towards what is the Boba here, as Lemkens in fact I think has jumped to the pits. It's just not gone right, and I think the Boba has done enough to break away from James Slates for the time being as they make their way out of the chicane and over through turn 11. The gap is now 2.2 seconds. We'll wait and see whether it closes up again, but I think the Boba right now, as he flashes a light to Elwin Sykes there to say, look, you're a lap down, please move aside. And Boba knows he's not hanging around here. He's running away with this. He wants to make it 2 out of 2 tonight and get the maximum possible points, and essentially send a message back to Lorenzo Gualtieri, which is, yeah, you did it at Watkins Glen, now I'm going to do it here. As meanwhile, Sam Holman, well, he has just moved down to P3. I think Sam Holman's had an off track, and Paul Scott is now 2.6 seconds up the road. As you can see, Paul Scott there tucked in behind the traffic jam of GT3s, and well, it's all kicking off up and down the field right now, and I think some tired arms and legs are starting to kick in here as the time wears down. We still have 21 minutes to go, and my goodness, this race is only proving to up the ante, and I can see you guys and girls there in the YouTube chat in particular enjoying yourselves as our drivers make the way on around. But right now, can Sam Holman find a way back past Paul Scott? He's going to have to close up to him. The gap is 2.5 seconds. Will he find a way to close up to Paul Scott, or will the next gen racing driver have found a way to break on through? We'll have to wait and see. But as they make the way on around once again, with 20 minutes remaining, we now move into the final third of this race. The LMP2 drivers, of course, such as Sam Holman from Hollerton Racing here, will now have to think about their fuel. Have they got enough fuel to get to the end? If not, can they fuel save? Do they have to make another pit stop? They've got to think about those considerations. Meanwhile, the GT3 class drivers, they should be able to make it to the end on what is a refuel tank after their single pit stop with ease. But have any of them pushed too hard or underfueled the car? That is the big question. And well, all good it's be, and that is Mark Arrowsmith into the wall there. Arrowsmith for a moment, he's jumped to the pit. So Arrowsmith's race going from good to bad to worse as he's now down to P23. But talking of a driver here who is continuing to try and hunt down another spot on the podium. Well, he's in P3 right now in the GT3 Pro class. Lucas Romano here, who he's just not able to close up to dirt bounce, and I do think that bounce right now in his element in that Mercedes. To be fair, the BMW M4 no slouch, but by comparison on the straights, it's the Mercedes AMG's power, that raw guttural V8 engine versus the turbo-based engine of Romano's BMW. It is the case that Romano right now just not close enough in order to be able to gain the most out of the slipstream of that Mercedes as they make their way on through. As they come rip-roaring on through right now, we can see there Paul Walton Sr. in the YouTube chat cheering on his son, tearing up the field and saying, keep it up, son, make us proud. And indeed, Paul Walton right now, in terms of tearing it up the field, I can tell you he is 27.5 seconds clear of his next place rival, and that is Paul Scott right now. Walton for RD Sim Sport is absolutely flying, and I think he is putting this one well out into the distance. I think he's put this one to bed and he just needs to bring it home. He doesn't need to prove anything other than get the car home and take the points. We'll wait and see as he roars on through, but I do of course think, given the fact that he's debuted in the season tonight and we do still have some class adjustments potentially on the way for relative performance, this could be a round which sees him being looked and being moved up to the Apex Racing Academy LMP2 Pro class. We'll have to wait and see, but that's a story for another time. But speaking of a story for here and now, Sam Holman has caught up to Paul Scott, and as they make the way down to the break over turn 10, Holman up the inside of Paul Scott there, and as they come on through, Paul Scott back it off, and Sam Holman all right out on the limit there is Holman. And in fact, with that snap oversteer on exit, we can see that Paul Scott going up the inside. And as they make their way through, well, that is Davide Favo putting into evasive action. But Scott versus Holman, it is the case that it kicks off into one once more. And Holman goes wide. He manages to bring the car and straight line it on the grass, but just taking a bit of a wide line there, and the tyres just not offering the grip anymore. All of our drivers have yet to change tyres. They don't have to change any tyres, but it is the case that Holman there, in making that mistake, it has cost him very dearly. And with all this happening, meanwhile, I can tell you that Tristan Di Nobrega has moved up into P2 in the GT3 AM class. Now, how has that happened? What I do think is the case that James States has had a mistake somewhere, because that last lap from James States of 120.3 versus Tristan Di Nobrega of a 118.59. And I do wonder whether it was a mistake that has led to the exchange here. But of course, James Slates, we know, has got a lot of pace, much like Nobrega, so we'll wait to see how that plays out as they make the way down the hill through the S's here. One thing that is definitely for sure, on that previous lap, Di Nobrega was absolutely pushing it and then some, because he set his personal best of the race, a 118.59. And as I look to the timing screens here for all of the GT3 AM class drivers, I do believe that's the fastest lap in the GT3 AM class. And as a result, Di Nobrega is absolutely charging as they make the way on around. And as they come on through an outer turn number 7 right now, he's going after Navarro de Bova. And well, the Belgian here, he's only 1.5 seconds up the road. In fact, 1.2 seconds up the road. This battle for the lead of the GT3 AM class is not over yet as they make the way down into the chicane once more. And I do wonder whether the McChange by DB2 driver knows he has got a Racing Team Astra driver closing in on him very rapidly as they make the way down and around. We'll have to wait and see, as Navarro de Bova right now I think will be focusing more on just keeping that track position and keeping the lap times coming in as he sets a 119.4 there. Meanwhile, Tristan Di Nobrega a 118.8. He is closing very rapidly here. He's closed up by 6 tenths of a second on the 8 tenths of a second on that, no, 6 tenths to get my maths right on that previous lap. But meanwhile, as they make the way on through Lamont-Wedder, what on earth has happened here to our leader in the GT3 Pro class? He's made a mistake. That's at turn 5. I think it's a classic mistake of hitting the exit curb too high and as a result spinning the car, but he's lost the lead of the class, and now that lead has gone to Dirt Bounce here, and Dirt Bounce right now, he's only got a 1 second advantage on Lamont-Wedder as they make the way past Jeremy DeBova there, who's had perhaps one of the worst races of his season to date, in fact the worst when we reflect. But right now Dirt Bounce having his best race of the season as he looks to try and hold off Lucas Romano with not too long to go. Another 15 minutes to go when they come across the start finish line, and with a quarter of this race remaining, it is going to be all the way to the end for the pair of the drivers as Lucas Romano has to try and find a way to come on back. And we are having some clarification there in the Twitch chat from Lamont-Wedder or No Mercy NL, and it is the case of saying that he had a mistake with, I believe, Sean Scooter, the two of them coming together, and that's very unfortunate, Lamont. But here's the case, still in P3 and soldiering on and looking to try and catch back up to Romano and Bounce, especially if they start fighting hard, as we see there Paul Walton going around Lamont-Wedder in terms of the LMP driver just coming through the GT3 field once again. But whilst all this is happening, I can tell you that Navarro de Bova has opened up his advantage in the GT3 AM class to 2.1 seconds, and I think that's the way the LMP2 traffic has fallen, plus also Navarro de Bova not setting the best of laps, but Tristan Di Nobrega having traffic coming through, because that was a 121.0 for Di Nobrega last time out. But whilst this is all playing out, of course, we did have only moments to go come into the pits. Richard Stanton, I do believe Richard Stanton currently being serviced, so they'll be putting fuel in the car here. He's pushed it a bit to the limit, and with that, I wonder if any more of the LMP class drivers will need to make the pit stops. And meanwhile, will Mark Baker, we saw him have that off, and he dropped a bit far back from Paul Williams, but now he is catching back up to his teammate very gradually here as he makes his way on through. And we use the interlude and all the action to take a brief sip of water. As our drivers continue to make their way on around right now, it is the case in these closing stages. The big question, of course, will be who's got the pace to go to the end, who's got the fuel to go to the end as well, particularly if you're an LMP class driver. And we'll look into that battle for P2, P3 in the LMP class. I can tell you that Sam Holman right now, the Hollerton Racing driver, has fallen back a little bit off of Paul Scott. And I think it's one of those situations whereby for Holman, he's lost out quite significantly with that one mistake he had coming out of turns, well, it was turn number 11 here. We simply cut the tyres, turn number 10 I should say, we cut the tyres a bit too hard, and perhaps he's taken a little bit of the life out of the tyres. Perhaps they're not just as comfortable anymore. As we see there in the rear view picture, Mark Sykes find his way on through at P4 in the GT3 and P15 overall, and right now looking very good as Mark Sykes in what is one of his best races of the season so far, if not the best of the season. And as he makes his way down into the S's once again, I think he'll be very pleased with how this has played out. Didn't work out on the strategy in terms of staying in the lead or in the podium places once he left the pits, but he's definitely put it in a good lap after lap, and as he makes his way up the hill, it is the case now. He'll be thinking about just bringing the car home with a sizable advantage to Kurt Van Hoenacker, what is Lorenzo Gualtieri of 18.7 seconds. But meanwhile, we are here, and we've had it said there in the YouTube chat from the driver himself, Stefan Wessels here. In this case, fuel saving done, battle for fourth. Loading, and well, we'll have to wait and see as he is right now closing up to Mark Baker, and I think he will be trying to take a shot at the team Tetra Rouge drivers as he makes his way out of turn number 7. He's going to have to close down that gap, but Wessels in terms of best lap pace, a whole second almost faster than both Williams and Baker in this race so far, and in terms of relative pace, he's matching Williams in 111s, but he's outpacing Mark Baker quite sizably, 2 seconds taken out of Mark Baker on that previous lap. As they make the way down into the turn 10 chicane this time, of course, it will be how the traffic comes with them, and as they roll on through here, well, Wessels looking very smart indeed, as meanwhile we are hearing a bit further down the road that Gualtieri has been passed by what is Didi Verlaming, that those two change in place, but it's not in class, it's between two different classes, but Wessels now on a charge here, hunting after Mark Baker, and we'll have to wait and see what happens, because Baker, you can see here at the front of the camera, the Team Tetra Rouge driver, as he comes out for the S, he's got traffic in the form of Elwin Sykes, and of course Elwin Sykes allowed to take his natural racing line through the S, as he doesn't have to do any lifting off or give way, and it'd be unsafe to do so. To be fair, it would unsettle the car if he did so, particularly given the engine is in the rear of that McLaren, the McLaren being that V8 bi-turbo, and as they make the way through turns 6 and 7 right now, Baker has definitely, he's literally had the advantage. He had to Stefan Wessels halved in the space of the S's in 6 and 7, and Wessels is now on that opportunity to go on the offensive as they make the way down that back straight. The long charge here, and of course they'll both have the toe of Mark Sykes for a brief while, and Baker trying to capitalise on that, literally hugging the rear of Mark Sykes as much as he dare, but Stefan Wessels meanwhile closing up and just gradually inching ever closer. But speaking of battles inching closer, well, the battle for the GT3 Pro lead is inching ever closer as well, and that is Lucas Romano versus Dirt Bounce here. It's only a second between the two of them. They've been putting in equal laps every time. Literally, that last lap, for example, 118.92 for Dirt Bounce, and 118.86 for Lucas Romano. They've been trading lap times as if they're trading shares on the stock market, and as they make the way down the back straight here, it is the case that with 10 minutes to go, I do wonder how close it's going to be between these two come those final laps, because they are both pushing to their utmost, and we'll have to wait and see as they roll on through at turn number 10 and head over the crest here. And as they come to the end of this lap, we do have to jump to Stefan Wessels here, who has got a little bit of traffic as he makes his way there past what is Gus Franken, but as he does so, he is trying to close that delta to Mark Baker, with the traffic falling really unfavourably at the moment. Every time he comes onto this back straight, the traffic has just held him a little bit, and Mark Baker just keeping that gap at around 1.2 seconds. Wessels will feel the distant toe down the straight, but he won't feel anything like what he wants, as meanwhile Lucas Romano has closed up massively to the back of Dirt Bounce. Bounce has made a mistake coming through turns 2 through to 4, and the RP Motorsport Pro Am driver here, what could he do? Well, he's got to stay this close coming out of turn number 7, because otherwise the AMG power in front of him will simply just pull away or hold him at bay. And as they make the way through 6 and into 7, you can see Romano getting as close as he dare as they exit out the corner, but a little bit of oversteer on exit there has just stunted his growth in terms of acceleration down the back straight. But now, as they begin to equalise here, this is where the toe will come into effect, and he is starting to build up that speed little by little here as he's 2.5 tenths off the back of the Mercedes. Now 2 tenths. Will he dare to look for the move? If he does, it's going to be a lunge. He doesn't quite go for it at the end. He knows to wait. He's got some time here. Just put some pressure, try and get in the head of Dirt Bounce, try to upset the driver in front, find a way to cause problems. as they make their way over 11 and down into 12. He's not able to find a way through at this time as they roll on through it into another lap. I can also tell you that Stefan Vessels is now only 8 tenths off the back of Mark Baker, and Mark Baker in turn is only 9 tenths off his teammate Paul Williams in the battle for P4 in the LMP2 class. But we stay with Lucas Romano for the time being as they battle for the GT3 Pro leader. You see Romano there just a little unsettled on turning through 2 and into 3. The same for Bounce on exit out of 4. Both drivers are literally on the ragged edge of what the tyres will do, and as they make their way through the S's this time, will Romano literally, I think he's got to try and stay closer than this. He's too far back, and if he stays this far back, he will lose out unless he get a really smooth run out of 6 and 7, which, to be fair, the further back he is, he may feel a little bit less of the dirty air of the Mercedes in front, and maybe about it as we see Bounce goes deep under braking there, and as a result, Lucas Romano gains the advantage. Now, I wonder whether this is a tactical let through here. We've seen it in sports such as Formula 1 before, where a driver will let through there's a long straight coming up, but we have no DRS or anything like that in this series. And as they make their way down the back straight here, I think Lucas Romano has been given an opportunity to seize the lead with Bounce locking up into the corner at turn number 7, and Romano holds on for now with 7.5 minutes to go. And as they make their way out of turn number 10, we'll wait and see on the next lap. But meanwhile, Stefan Vessel's there at the rear of your camera shot. It's hard to see, but he's going to get closer now as they make their way down the back straight here. He's hunting Mark Baker. They've both got a huge lollygaggle with GT3s in front of them, and Stefan Vessels can't find a way on through. Mark Baker has dared to dream his way through. Meanwhile, Vessels has played it safe, and he's paid very dearly in the fact that gap has opened up from 3 tenths all the way up to at least 1.1 seconds, and now he's got to fight his way through. As meanwhile, hold up a second, what has happened here? Well, that's Tristan Brega. Well, it was the case that Navarro de Bova was the head of that pack, and well, Tristan Brega has found his way past Navarro de Bova, and well, they were separate only moments ago, and Dino Brega is now into the lead of the GT3 AM class. Well, goodness me, it's all kicking off right at the very end, and Brega now has to try and break away from Navarro de Bova, and there is not much to go. And well, you can understand why now, as Stefan Vessels clarifies in the YouTube chat why he didn't go for the move past the pair of them, because the fact that Dino Brega was battling for the lead and he wanted to play it safe, and well, it's well played, because now Racing Team Astra Blue have got one that drives into the lead of a class with only a little bit of time left to go. Meanwhile, Stefan Vessels has found a way past Mark Baker, and Mark Baker's made a mistake there coming out of turn number 7, but we look back to the battle for the lead of the GT3 AM class. As you can see here, we've got LMPs going through, and goodness me, Navarro de Bova literally switching from one side to that to follow Dino Brega's slipstream as they make their way down the back straight. You can see Jeremy de Bova there. Well, he's not going to want to be in the way, or is he? As I think Navarro de Bova has not got the speed to come on through, and he's got to wait. But you can see his father moves out of the way, immediately sacrifices the track position, and as they make their way down through the hill, it is going to be 5.5 minutes to see who's going to be your winner in the GT3 AM class. It's not over yet as they continue to battle the way on through. My goodness me, it's the case that Road Atlanta keeps on delivering, and whilst we've not got long to go, I suspect there's going to be a bit more before this is all over. And remember, we still do have Stefan Vessels, who needs to try and find a way, if he's got the pace, past Paul Williams in the remainder of this race. There's 5 minutes to go, and he is only 1.7 seconds off. As they roll through this time, our drives knowing that the laps are coming down, the clouds are coming over, and the sun is setting. Here's one of those cases now, where they'll have to dig into their reserves in terms of their energy, in terms of the car. And well, who has got a little bit left in the tank? Who has got that last little bit of push that they could give here, as they will literally all now be feeling the strain of having to push so hard over the course of this race. This circuit just takes the life out of you. That's what Road Atlanta does. It is a roller coaster ride for a reason. You are constantly being pushed and on edge, and right now we can see that it is the case whereby Navarro de Bova just not close enough to go for the move, and Dino Brega, as we're hearing meanwhile that Kurt van Hernacker has had a bit of a moment. In fact, I think he locked up in the rear of the pitch there as they were making their way through 6 and 7, and he's in P18, that's P6 in the GT3 AM class, and just carrying on all the same as he makes his way on around and down on towards another lap very shortly. As he comes on through here, he's chasing after Paul Terry, who is 37.5 seconds up the road, so I cannot foresee the two of them coming together. As you see, there is the case that Jim Stanton making his way through P7 in the LMP class and overall. But right now things have calmed down a little bit as we are waiting to see how the final closing moments of this race will play out. But meanwhile, looking from the midfield to our leader right now in the LMP class, we can see Paul Walton continuing to lead by a sizable margin, an advantage now of 47.5 seconds. Would you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? That is the pace that Walton's been showing. He has just not let off at all in this race, as we see a very late last minute pit stop for Peter Lemkens here. He makes his way into the pits with a slightly crumpled front end on that Mercedes, and that is going to promote, I think, some of our GT3 class drivers up positions. Will Gus Franken gain from this? That's the question. Well, I think Gus Franken has got a long way to go to gain. I think Lemkens may be safe. It's just a quick splash and dash of fuel, so I think Lemkens will not lose P4 in the GT3 Pro class as he makes his way out of the pit lane. I think he'll feel safe with that one as he makes his way back out onto the circuit. But meanwhile, we were talking about him earlier and we ride on board with him now. Stefan Vessel's here for Racing Team Astra Blue. He's closing up to Paul Williams. Williams there catching Elwood Sykes, a little bit of traffic, making their way out of turn number 5, and as they make their way into the run to 6 now, you can see that, well, the traffic is falling to Paul Williams at the worst possible time, and it is Racing Team Astra drivers as well, and whilst they are expected to get out of the way, they won't be in a hurry to do so for Vessels, of course, with their teammate trying to close up to Williams. As they make their way down the back straight here, it is the case that all be fair and square. Vessels now in that slipstream, and he'll be trying to gain as much as he possibly can here as they come down in towards the chicane. You can see Gualterio there on the right. He'll be lifting off, I think, to give Vessels the opportunity to come through. They'll have heard over the radio from the team principal that it is the case that Vessels is hunting Paul Williams with only 2 minutes to go here, hunting down that P4 in the LMP2 class. They make their way out of turn at number 12. Williams goes to the inside here to go around what is there. I believe that is RJ Kregel, and in doing so, both drivers have a very tight line into turn 1, but they both navigate it well as they make their way over the ridge and into turn 4, and as they roll on through, well, turn 3 and then into turn 4, and as they roll on through here, it is the case the Vessel's so close now. He's getting ever closer and feeling the impact of that dirty air through the sweeping sequence of corners, and he will have to try and stay that close as he makes his way out 6 and 7 if he wants the toe to look for the move down the back straight into the turn 10 chicane. Now as they make the way on through and heading into what is turn number 7 here, will he be closed up at corner exit? I don't think so. I think in fact Paul Williams has got a much better exit, has opened the gap up to 7 tenths, so this has not worked out as they make the way down the back straight here and head towards the chicane. He's going to have a couple more laps to try, however, with Paul Walton just behind them, and well, if Walton is able to lap them, they will finish the race a lap down and therefore have one less lap, as the leader's going to come on through shortly to go on to the final lap of this race. And well, I think Walton might just lift off a little bit here to let them battle, as Vessels now close it up very rapidly here. I think Williams has made a small mistake coming out the chicane, and as they make their way on to the final lap, then it is the case that Walton goes on to lap number 50, and Vessels now has one more chance. Unless Walton does not lap them, then he'll have 2 more chances to go for the move here. We'll have to wait to see what Walton decides to do, but meanwhile we focus here on this battle as they make the way down through the S's here. We ride on board the gearbox, the Team Tetrarugis Paul Williams, and you'll see the Briton there carrying a bit more momentum into the apex, but he understeers wide, and this is the opportunity the Vessels will be looking for. Williams goes to the fence for the inside, but Vessels have got a lot of momentum. He's going to dare to go around the outside. There's enough space for the 2 of them, and Will Williams holds the inside here, but as they make their way through, Vessels goes to the cutback and gets it done, and as they make their way down the back straight now, it's all about slipstream, and can Paul Williams come on back? Paul Walton just watches behind them, tucks into the slipstream. He knows he doesn't want to be involved in any of this. He doesn't want to retire the car if it should turn into an accident, and you can see Williams here looking up the inside, but Vessels breaks as deep as he dares, and as a result, I think Vessels has got the place, but as he now holds on to P4, we look at our race leader, because after an hour of dominating form, he's going to make it 2 out of 2, and what's likely to be the perfect evening. Paul Walton is your winner in the feature here in the LMP2 class at Road Atlanta. It will then be 52 seconds behind, and we'll wait for him will be Paul Scott, but meanwhile making their way on around the circuit right now as he comes over the hill. He's done it. He's made it 2 out of 2 wins himself. It's RP Motorsport Pro-Am's Lucas Romano who takes the win, and that makes it a mimic of what his teammate Peter Lemkens did last time out at Watkins Glen. P2 in the GT3 Pro class will go to Dirt Bounce, and it will be Lammert Wedder who comes home on the podium in the end for Team Racing Netherlands in the GT3 Pro class. Meanwhile, as he makes his way over the hill here. Tristan Brega from Racing Team Astra Blue has held off the challenge from Navarro de Bova. He is your winner in the feature race here in the GT3 AM class. It will be then Navarro de Bova behind him in P2. James Slates will come over the bridge very shortly in P3, in a deserved P3, and indeed all three of them deserving to be on that podium in a fantastic three-way battle for the win. It is Paul Scott, who's just crossed the line only moments ago from Next Gen Racing, who brings home P2 in the LMP2 AM class, and Sam Holman there P3, and I think Holman will be very proud of that P3, and indeed Paul Scott himself will be proud of that P2 in the LMPs, but nobody in their class was able to touch Paul Walter today. But still fantastic battling up and down the field as all of our drivers are now classified. And let's check those race results on the left hand side of your screen, where you can see that in the LMP AM class, Paul Walton in the end taking that magnificent win ahead of Paul Scott. Sam Holman rounded off the podium. Stefan Vessels P4, the best of the rest ahead of Paul Williams, making that move on the final closing lap. And then we have Mark Baker P6 ahead of Jim Stanton, Michael Price, Richard Stanton, and then last but not least in the class, who fitted well, in fact not last but not least, the class penultimate there, that is Baz Beecher, and then last but not least Jack Whyborn. Meanwhile in the GT3 Pro class, it was Lucas Romano who took the win in the end ahead of Dirt Bounce and Lamont Wedder on the podium. Lamont Wedder with that one mistake that cost him so dearly in a chance to win, and then P4 DDD Verlaming ahead of Gus Franken, Jeremy DeBova, and then Peter Lemkens and Sean Scudder. And then meanwhile in the GT3 AM class, they'll be very pleased with this. Tristan Brega taking the win for the South African driver with his maiden win in the series ahead of Navarro de Bova in a closely fought battle, and James Slates as well right up there on the podium in P3. And Mark Sykes P4, Lorenzo Gualteri in P5, and then Kurt Van Hoenacker P6, Elwin Sykes P7, Davide Favo P8, Arjen Kregel P9, and Mark Arrowsmith P10. Liam Tack P11 in the end when all is said and done. What an absolutely brilliant race, ladies and gentlemen. And now we're going to take a brief 3 to 4 minute break before we come back for our post-race interviews, our post-round interviews. You won't want to miss them. Don't go anywhere. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in preparation for our post-round interviews with our drivers, our selected drivers from the IMB Raceway Lobby. That's Lobby 2. And of course, some of these drivers will be winners. Other drivers will be ones that finish not necessarily as winners, but wanted to be interviewed tonight. We unfortunately have had our fourth interviewee drop out at short notice, but we will still proceed with our three who are available. And we'll be kicking off with Paul Walton in the number 98 car very shortly. Our LMP AM driver, the back-to-back wins in absolutely dominant form. But just a quick general thought on the race. Well, the race this night, fantastic racing at Road Atlanta, plenty of overtaking and battling opportunities. And also we did see quite a few overtakes in the pits, particularly in the GT3 AM class, where the strategies paid off in the end. But without further ado, let's come on to Paul Walton then, our very dominant performer in both of the races. And as we bring him into the interview room, Paul, a fantastic pair of drives for yourself tonight and qualifying even more so. How do you feel your round at Road Atlanta went?
Well, I came in, I wanted 56 points, and, well, I think I've got 56 points. So, yeah, I'm a bit relieved, actually. I was really nervous.
Well, indeed. Well, you definitely, I think, walked away with the 46 points and some also spare change to boot. And I think you've left a lot of jaws sagging on the tarmac in terms of the pace you demonstrated. But just dissecting your evening, going into tonight, of course, your opening round in the series, going into the LMP class. In qualifying, we saw you set an absolutely brilliant blistering lap that was in the end 0.7 of a second faster than your peers. Was that the lap that you were targeting? Was there a bit more out there, or was it quite a comfortable lap? You felt happy with that one?
Well, I feel like I got really lucky to begin with because I'm pretty sure I set what would have been the pole lap on lap 1. So I was lucky enough to have the first grid box. So I was the first one out anyway. So I just had complete open track from the get-go. And then after that, it was just luck getting a decent gap. So it's a bit tough with the open qualifying, but I feel like I lucked out there.
So with lucking out there and having that space, of course, translating it into the race, we've seen how strong the slipstream is down the back straight Road Atlanta. Was the aim in the sprint race that you hold on to a lead for the start and then just disappear off into the distance by the time you get to the end of the first lap?
Well, I've driven with Stefan Vessels before, and I know what he's like in the GT3. So he was basically my main rival coming in. And I seen he had a somewhat slow start on the green in the sprint race. And then they were fighting through turn 1, turn 2, and then by then I was already gone at the bottom of the hill. So after that, it was just kind of holding the gap and building it.
Indeed, and we saw a similar situation in the feature as well, whereby once you got into the lead of the feature, it was a case of opening that gap, building it out. But the feature saw you have to cut your way through the LMP field with the reverse grid. Just take us through what your plan was for coming through, because you came through very rapidly, but it was almost as if you did it in bursts. You gained 1 or 2 places, then the brief pause, and then gained some more places.
Well, usually the main places to overtake on this track is through turn 1 and into the last chicane. So I was just kind of waiting, and then every lap I was getting 1 position here, 2 positions there. And then after, what was it, lap 6 or something like that, I was in the lead. So just gotta luck out and just stay with people.
Oh, indeed. And once you were in the lead, of course, the focus turned pretty more towards the strategy. We saw a number of drivers having to do considerable fuel saving. Just take us through what it takes to really do that one stop in the LMPs, because the fuel must have been quite tight.
I was terrified because when I stopped, like 3 or 4 cars behind me didn't. They went the extra lap. So I was like, right, okay, this is going to be close. But in the end, I think I had a spare lap in the tank. So the setup is tough for the 1-hour races.
Oh, indeed. And just a general thought, of course, we saw you last season in the GT3 Championship in the GT3 class. What made you want to go to the LMP class for this series?
If there was an LMP class last series, I would have been in it. LMP2 has always been ever since it was released, it's always been my go-to car. GT3 second. But basically, I was looking for an LMP2 league to join, and I'm familiar with you guys. I'm familiar with a lot of the drivers, so I figured I'd come back. And I want to win it this time, please.
Well, I'm sure you've started off on a brilliant building point for your campaign. And looking ahead to a week's time, we do head to the Canadian circuit of the Tyre Motorsport Park. How are you feeling for the very high-intensity circuit?
Well, unfortunately, this is the bad thing. I've already used my drop week last week. I'm not going to be here next week either, so I'm going to have to be full steam ahead for the rest of the season. It's going to be rough.
Oh, goodness me. Well, it'll be Daytona then in round number 4. I mean, it's 2 weeks away, but can you give us an early forecast of how you're feeling for Daytona?
Well, I'm stronger at Daytona than I am at Road Atlanta, so there's something.
Oh, goodness me. Now, that is going to be something exciting to look out for. But until then, congratulations once again on your double wins, your back-to-back wins tonight on your debut in this series. And well, thank you for joining us in the interview room. And we wish you all the best and look forward to seeing you out on circuit in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you. It's been really good talking to you again.
No problem. We'll catch you soon.
Bye-bye.
So here and there from Paul Walton, I think over the moon with his performance tonight. And you heard there right at the start, a very bold statement with regards to, I came into tonight wanting to take home 56 points. The maximum score, of course, of the 2 wins, plus qualifying on pole, plus also the fastest lap in both races. And it is my understanding he has secured those 56 points. And I think Walton establishing his name very early on. And well, he was saying there with regards to the sprint, the fact that he held on to the lead through the opening couple of corners with Vessels and company behind battling through the opening couple of corners. That gave him the ability to just disappear off into the distance by the time they completed the S's on lap 1. And in the feature, bursting his way through the pack and in the end having to take that early pit stop, whereas the rest of his peers decided to pit a lap later. That was a little bit of a concern, but once he came out back at the front of the pack, it was the case it was smooth sailing. And whilst we are going to miss Walton in terms of not see him in round number 3 next week due to scheduling, is the case that I suspect, despite him having to take 2 rounds, and well, he will miss out on key points because of the fact there's only 1 drop round in this series. I'm sure he'll be looking to come back strong and pick up every single point he can at Daytona. And well, if in his own words he's stronger at Daytona than he is at Road Atlanta, we can be sure that we have got a lot of fireworks due to kick off. But speaking of fireworks, and indeed a very positive evening, I think he'll be having some fireworks with regards to his performance, and the team will be very happy. We now come on to Lucas Romano, our GT3 PRO driver in the number 139 car, in what has been a very positive evening for him with regards to the 2 wins back-to-back. Let's bring Lucas Romano into the interview room and hear from him. And as we do, Lucas, a very strong evening for yourself. 2 back-to-back wins, pretty much mimicking what your teammate Peter Lemkens did at the Glen. How do you feel about how United Road Atlanta went?
Yeah, super happy, super happy. The sprint race actually went too easy, it seemed, but I was really fighting hard. It's a difficult track, but yeah, really happy with the result.
Oh, indeed. And it looked as though you were in a very happy place throughout the entirety of the night. I mean, starting off in qualifying, a great lap in qualifying to take that pole position in the BMW M4. Was that lap sort of your best lap? Was it on your target, or was there more out there, do you feel?
No, actually, I was 5 minutes before my fastest lap. I was on even a better lap. I think it would have been a 17 high, but then I got some traffic. So that lap I had to abandon. But then I had a tow and actually a bit less lap, but yeah, I managed P1.
Indeed, and translating that P1 into the sprint race, we saw a good start from yourself, although to be fair, your GT3 Pro class opponents were not too far behind you. What was the plan on the opening couple of laps of the sprint race? Because we've seen time and time again just how strong the toe is down the back straight of Road Atlanta, and if you can't open up a gap of more than 0.8 of a second, the driver behind you can be there with you into the chicane.
Yeah, that's true. I had to lock my teammate. My teammate was behind me, and we were on the channel on Discord. He told me he wasn't going to attack me anytime soon, so I was yeah comfortable with that. So I could try to do my thing and drive my pace. And actually on lap 3, I did a very good lap, and I had a 2-second gap, I think. And from there on, I just managed the race.
Indeed, and it did look as though it was a race well managed, and of course yourself and your teammate Peter Lemkens picking up that P1, P2 in the end, and in translating that into the feature race, of course the pair of you starting right at the back of your class and in amongst the GT3s there. Just take us through what the plan was over the course of the race, because you both seemed to come through in quick succession together, but it wasn't the smoothest of races. There were a couple of moments where things went a bit wrong.
Yeah, very wrong. I There was a point in the race I thought, oh my god, I'm going to not going to finish. Certainly with Arjan and Goose have that crash right in front of me. I even touched Arjan a little bit, but I had minor damage. I could continue, lost 2 places, I guess. And then I didn't really have a plan actually. I was thinking about just surviving at the beginning and then trying to get in my flow and do the best I can. But that was actually quite working out good. But then Kurt made a mistake, Kurt von Unacker, and he touched me. I spun. Yeah, that wasn't nice. But then I went in for the undercut, and that turned out really good. I used my fast repair because I was lacking a bit of pace after that second touch. But after the pit stop, the car was flying, and I could catch Dirk in the end. We had a really nice battle, but very pleased to overtake him in the end.
Oh, indeed. And coming on to that battle between yourself and Dirt Bouts, which went on for an exceedingly long time, I think somewhere in the region of about 12 laps, it looked very close between the two of you, where you had the speed through the corners in the BMW M4, but Bouts seemed to have the pull on the straights. Obviously, in that situation, you started putting a lot of pressure on Bouts, corner after corner. Was that the plan, to try and bait him into a mistake, or had you sort of thought, you know what, I'm going to go for him at this particular corner?
Yeah, no, I noticed he was very strong on the exit, so I had to push, and then he made a little mistake on the brakes. I could take the inside and take the position. He defended not too hard. That was really kind of him, but I think I did the move quite good. And yeah, we had a really nice battle. He was strong, but I had a little bit of an advantage in the S's. And managed to take advantage of that.
Oh, indeed. And in the end, it did come down to him locking up and going a bit deep into turn 7. You quickly moving to the inside to take the place. And from there, holding off in the run down the back straight, despite the grunt of that Mercedes, and bringing it across the line at P1 once again. And looking ahead, of course, to a week's time now, with the series visiting the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, how are you feeling for the high-intensity circuit?
Actually, I have no idea. I've never driven there before, so have some practice to do, and we will see.
Oh, indeed. But I do have to ask, of course, given the fact that yourself and Peter Lemkens now have both made it 2 back-to-back wins apiece, are we going to see the two of you share wins in the next race, or is one of you going to take 2 wins back-to-back again?
I don't know if Peter knows that track very well. I think better than me, but we'll keep it clean and clean but hard, and we'll see.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you both get on in a week's time. But until then, thank you for joining us in the interview room, and congratulations once again on a superb pair of drives tonight.
Thank you.
No problem. Have a lovely evening.
You too. Bye.
So hearing there from Lucas Romano, very happy with his performance, and you can hear that in his voice with regards to the fact that it's just worked out so well for him, and taking things into qualifying in terms of having that strong lap in qualifying, which translated into the sprint race, and well, in the end, working with his teammate, both of them on communications to one another, himself and Peter Lemkens, saying, we're not going to battle, and Peter Lemkens saying, I'm not going to battle you on the opening laps, let's just break away. And then in the feature race, of course, the two of them coming through, it wasn't the cleanest of races in terms of avoiding contact, but in the end it was the case that Romano was able to keep building up that pace and then battle with Dirt Bouts for the lead all the way to the end, and Bouts making that one critical mistake was the difference and saw Romano take the lead and never look back. Well, now we come to our final interview for tonight, and that is with Sam Holman, as we'll shortly be bringing him into the interview room. And Sam Holman, our LMP AM driver here, and it is the case that as we do just bring him into the interview room, we'll be having a chat with the driver who finished 4th in the sprint and P3 in the feature. Let's bring him on in. Welcome into the interview, Sam, and well, a good set of results tonight in the LMP AM class. P4 in the sprint, P3 in the feature. How do you feel your evening went?
Yeah, it was. It's one of those really. Roadlands is not really one of my favourite tracks. And going into the evening, had you have told me I'd have got a P4 and slightly more notably a P3, I'd have been quite happy with that, I think. So yeah, I'm pleased as far as that goes, but it certainly wasn't my best performance.
Well, As you say there, the fact that you're very grateful for those results, and just taking it back to qualifying in particular, we saw in qualifying that in terms of pace, it didn't look as though you were quite up there in terms of the qualifying laps. You kept seeming to find a bit of traffic out on circuit. Did qualifying just not go the way you wanted it to?
I couldn't string a lap together to save my life. It just, whether it was, you go out there and, you go out in the cold tires, you do something silly, or you don't find the pace, or traffic was a big issue as well. So again, it's because it's not a circuit I've raced a lot on. I don't sort of know the overtaking places as well as some other circuits. So it's something I needed to brush up on. But I remember right at the end, I got what I was on for a really nice qualifying lap. And I can't remember what ruined it. I think I came up against the back marker and I just ended up throwing it into the wall out of frustration. So it was one of those. So it was a qualifying to forget, and then just a case of getting my head down in the sprint, really.
Indeed, and talking about getting your head down in the sprint, you definitely did so in very fast fashion. We saw some rather early attempts at moves from yourself and really a bit of a do-or-die attitude, which was great to see. Was it the case you saw in the sprint, you know what, I'm just going to go for this and see how far we can get up the order?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think I'm quite a calculated driver most of the time. Things happen and things end up happening in the feature. But I was actually really pleased with the P4. I felt like I'd finished higher, if that makes sense. And I only started, I think I was P7, so to only gain 3 positions wasn't major, but I gained them quite quickly. And I think I didn't get a single instant point either, so didn't run wide once or anything. So I was just pleased how it all came together. And there were a couple of instances where things got close to people, and a couple of tight moves, but kept it clean, which is nice. So I was really, really pleased with that one.
Indeed, and taking what was a smooth performance in the sprint into the feature. Feature ace, a little bit of a difficult one, but some great battling between yourself and Paul Scott throughout the race, no doubt. The two of you sharing a lot of side-by-side moments.
Yeah, I mean, Paul and I have raced with NXTGEN before. I sadly missed last season for a few reasons, but I did the GT seasons last year or two, especially over COVID. So Paul and I are no strangers to each other on track, and we seem to be around about the same pace, which is why we end up tripping over each other. But we have a really good sort of relationship as far as that goes. And we were chatting just after the race, and actually he was the first person to come on the mic and said, "Mate, you got really unlucky with traffic," which I did. A P2 was there, and just for a few reasons, it didn't happen for me. I had a hardware error on the warm-up lap. I'm not sure if you saw me go off on the stream, but I went off just as we started the warm-up lap.
Yes.
And I didn't have the full screen mode enabled, so I went to do that, and my steering wheel did a stage exit left. And thankfully, by the time the screen had sorted itself out, it was only half a second, but I was off the track and managed to save it from the wall, which was a good thing. And then start was good, made up places quickly. It wasn't quite as good as my start last week, which I was very happy with. At Watkins Glen, where I got from third to first by the first corner, I was really pleased with that. But yeah, I just, much like the sprint, I was able to pick my way through the pack a bit. And I think I was in quite a good place. And there were a few people that just ended up coming together ahead of me, and a few people that made mistakes. And before long, I was in P1, which was great and felt really, really good, considering I wasn't looking forward to the race, wasn't confident for the race. But I saw Paul Walton was coming up behind me, and he absolutely lit up the timing sheets all night. So I didn't really put up a fight when he got to me. It wasn't worth it. So I think the only shot I had was trying to do a bit of fuel saving. I know that I managed to get an extra lap out of Paul, and it sounds like from listening to his interview, he's slightly concerned at the time. But in all honesty, I dropped probably 5 or 6 seconds in fuel saving just to make it round. I knew it was going to be tight. I thought it was going to be tight. And so I thought, if I can just eke this extra lap out, if that lap saves me a pit stop at the end, then it could be the difference between, a win and a P2. But it wasn't to be, and I'm gutted in the end, because ultimately, I came P3 by 3 or 4 seconds. So it could have made the difference there. And with the traffic all evening as well. I mean, there were multiple instances with traffic. I know I was up behind Lucas at one point when he was in P3. And I sat behind him through the complex and just watched the gap to Paul Scott dwindle. And then coming out the bottom of the hill, I sort of had a moment where I just in, well, not frustration, but just in panic, just dropped it, went into the wall, and Paul went past me. And that was it really until I managed to catch back up. We had a really fun little battle for about half a lap. I got past him sort of down the back hill, and then had a massive moment coming up over the hill into the final complex, and he got me back. And then I tried to go around the outside of turn 1, lost it, fired it off down the grass, and that was the last I saw of him.
Indeed, and that brilliant battle in the end, which was brought to its conclusion, as you say, by the mistake at turn 1. But a sign of things to come, I reckon. Indeed, some fantastic battles lie in wait between yourself and Paul Scott. There's no doubt about that. But looking ahead now to round number 3 in a week's time, where we head to Canada for the Tyre Motorsport Park, how are you feeling ahead of the high-intensity circuit?
I've not even looked at it yet. I think I saw Canada and thought, oh, I like the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and then realised it wasn't that track and went, oh, that's unfortunate. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I spent 2 years living in Canada a few years ago, so maybe that would count for something, but highly doubt it. But judging by the other interviews, it sounds like a few people also aren't familiar with the circuit, so I'm hoping it's a bit of a common theme. But that said, it might make for a scrappy race, so I can only hope. But yeah, we managed to keep it clean. I think that's been one of the major things is, you know, it's, as far as I'm aware, it's NXTGEN's first sort of multi-class. It's been great fun, but I think people are still learning to how everyone races. And I think to have the second round at such a busy and tight circuit was, difficult for up and down the grid.
Oh, indeed. But all the same, most of the drivers were able to make it through, including yourself. And looking ahead to Canada in a week's time, where we wish you all the best in your preparations and look forward to seeing you out on the circuit at the Tyre Motorsport Park. But until then, congratulations on your results tonight, and thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Thanks, Paul. We'll see you next week.
Wishing you all the best. Have a great evening.
You too. Cheers, mate.
So hearing that from Sam Holman, who in the end, on reflection, very happy with tonight and with the results in particular. And with qualifying, he was saying qualifying not working out, just couldn't quite hook up a lap. And when he was on the verge of hooking up a lap, something seemed to get in the way, whether it be a bit of traffic or a small mistake. And then going into the sprint, starting P7, moved up to P4. And in his own words there, it felt like he'd achieved a lot more in terms of the final position. But I think that's a sign of how much it meant to him to make his way up those places, gain those 3 places so rapidly and hold on to the P4. And that feature, that P3 finish in the feature in the end, coming down to a mistake which saw him end his battle for P2 with Paul Scott. But I think we're going to be seeing plenty more of Sam Holman battling with Paul Scott over the rest of this season. The pace that Holman is demonstrating is coming on strong, round on round, lap on lap, and I can only imagine he's going to continue to move up there. But of course, we will wait and see what happens in the next round. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. And if you do want to know more about the NextGen Racing community, what we do in the series we run, why not check us out, our official website, that is nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, if you are a Facebook user, you can go to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing for further details. On top of that, a big thank you to our partners, without whom we'd not be able to run Lobby 2, and that is IMB Racewear, their website, imbracewear.com, if you want to know more about them. And now we look ahead to next time, round number 3, the Canadian Tyre Motorsport Park. We continue the series tour of North American Canada, and we will be bringing you all the racing action from Lobby 2 as if it were live on Friday, the 22nd of April 2022. It will be the case that we'll be bringing you all of the Lobby 2 broadcasts on Fridays from this point onwards, and well, it is the case. The circuit is highly intense, and if you thought Road Atlanta was tight and high speed, we are hearing down the paddock that the Canadian Tyre Motorsport Park takes that to a whole new level of intensity. But we'll have to wait and see next time. Until then, from all of us here at NextGen, thank you very much for tuning in. We wish you a great weekend, particularly if it is the 4-day Easter weekend, and even if it's just a 2-day weekend, have a great weekend ahead, ladies and gentlemen. Stay safe, stay well, stay smiling. I have been your host and commentator, Paul TX141, and until next time, remember to stay on track. Good night.